the assassin girl becomes the bodyguard for a duke's daughter. Volume 1 by Sasa Tauguru, translated by Arcadia, audiobook by Masquerade at Masquerade Audiobooks. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Slayer. From a tender age, Shilane Hazakura was raised for a singular purpose, to serve one specific person. She honed her swordsmanship to protect that individual, required only to grow stronger for their sake. That was how she was taught, and so she never once questioned her way of life. As she followed those instructions and trained in the art of the sword, Shilane eventually found herself drawn to battles against formidable opponents. She couldn't recall what sparked this shift, but fighting weaker foes held no appeal for her. Only the desperate, life-or-death struggles against the strong brought her any semblance of joy. She had been called a slayer at times, but Shilane never cut down others for mere pleasure. The very idea of harming the one she was meant to protect was unthinkable, or so it should have been. Where did that wretch go? They must still be around here somewhere. Shouts of rage echoed as a group of people searched frantically, their eyes bloodshot with fury. The one they sought was Shilane. On the day she turned 15, Shilane was set to officially begin her duties as a protector. But when she met her charge face to face, they were already dead. It appeared they had been slain by someone's blade, yet before Shilane could investigate, she was branded a traitor. Most likely, she had been framed. Someone had orchestrated an incident on the very day of her arrival, pinning the blame squarely on her. And not a single soul came to her defense. Having lived solely for the way of the sword, she had no close companions, an unsurprising outcome in hindsight. How did it come to this? Her long hair tied back neatly, she had dressed with care for her first day on the job, an unusual effort for her. But the new clothes she'd prepared were now wasted, and she let out a heavy sigh. Shilane had sharpened her skills with the blade to protect that person, a noble-born individual. She had only seen their face a handful of times and barely spoken to them. Just when she thought her purpose was about to begin, she had lost the very place where she could wield her strength. All that remained was the undeniable stigma of a slayer. If caught, she would undoubtedly face execution. Surely, she wouldn't even be granted a chance to plead her case. Or perhaps the order had already been given: kill her on sight. Well then, I suppose I've no business here anymore. Though it was the land of her birth, she felt no attachment. Shilane was now free, beholden to no one's commands, unbound by any ties. Yet to truly claim that freedom, she was far too well known in this place. Thus, there was only one thing left for her to do. Where do you think you're escaping to, Shilane Hazakura? Her name was called and she turned her gaze. There stood a man, sword in hand, a stranger but one whose hostility was unmistakable. You are. You'll need to die here. You're to bear all the blame, you see. His words alone were enough for her to understand. The man before her was her enemy. Did you set this up, or do you have accomplices? None of that concerns you, but you were the perfect choice. A girl who wouldn't seem out of place as an assassin, that's what you are. I've never cut down anyone but criminals, you know, though I suppose you're not much different, so it's fine. Well, this is a surprise. Do you actually think you can beat me? I don't even know who you are. If you don't know, I'll give you a parting gift for the afterlife. My name is Ga. In an instant, the man's eyes widened. His words were cut short as a blade sliced through his throat, forcing a ragged breath from his lips. The girl had drawn the sword at her waist, its edge now dripping with fresh blood. His mouth flapped uselessly, but no sound emerged. He'd been caught off guard, no doubt, but to be so easily felled by a girl who had just turned 15 was beyond belief. His shock was understandable. To Shilane, however, the man wasn't worth her full effort, and she deemed further conversation pointless. I don't really care who you are or what your goals were, but just one thing, thank you. With a flick of her blade, she sent the blood splattering from its edge and offered the man a word of gratitude. Because of you, I've gained my freedom. I'd never even thought about going off on my own somewhere. Her words fell on ears that could no longer respond. Blood continued to pour from the slashed throat, the wound clearly fatal. Staggering, the man reached toward Shilane, then collapsed, his strength spent. His miscalculation lay in vastly underestimating Shilane's skill. Though rumors called her a slayer, he dismissed her as a mere 15-year-old girl. In truth, it was uncertain whether anyone in this land could match her in swordsmanship. To Shilane, The man's identity remained a mystery, but it no longer mattered. Perhaps he hadn't framed her so much as exploited her for some bid at power. But having resolved to leave this country behind, it was no longer her concern. She's here. Over this way, what? Others hunting Shilene arrived, their eyes widening at the grisly scene. A corpse with a slashed throat, still spilling fresh blood. That Shilene was responsible was obvious. Facing the speechless men, she spoke calmly. "If you come after me, I'll cut you down. I decided that just now." Those words marked her severance. Rather than prove her innocence, she chose to embrace the false stigma and walk the path of a sinner. From this point on, some of her pursuers might be unconnected to the man she'd just slain, but she would no longer distinguish between them. Anyone who chased her, anyone who opposed her, she would strike down without exception. This was the moment Slayer, Shilene Hazakura, was truly born. Unease rippled through her pursuers, yet none turned to flee. Even after witnessing the scene before them, did they still underestimate her as a mere girl? No, quite the opposite. They now saw her clearly as an enemy. Shilene regarded them and let out a small sigh. "Ha, I don't mind either way, just don't expect mercy." That was the signal for battle, and within minutes, a sea of blood stretched across the ground. Most of those who pursued Shilene were cut down, and she would come to be known as a heinous criminal etched into history. By then, however, she had already left the country, never to return. Chapter 2. The Pursuers. 3 months later, Shilene Hazakura found herself in the town of Azenta, located to the east of the Lindworm Kingdom. Many of the passers-by cast fleeting glances her way. Her black hair, rare in these parts, and the flamboyant patterned clothing traditional to the eastern lands only added to their curiosity. Yet Shilene paid no heed to the stares, furrowing her brow and muttering to herself as she stood alone. What should I do? Head to the capital or skip it entirely? Her eyes were fixed on a timetable. 2 magical trains were scheduled to depart at nearly the same time, each bound in a different direction. One was headed for the capital, while the other followed an outer route toward foreign lands. For Shilene, who traveled without a specific purpose, the direction itself didn't matter much. The real issue, however, was far more pressing. Her travel funds were running dangerously low. If I go to the capital and can't find work there? In remote areas, she could earn a temporary reward by hunting monsters. But in more developed regions, it was a different story. Without affiliation to some organization, securing a job was no easy feat. As a wandering traveler, Shilene had no plans to join any group just yet. Moreover, being too young raised doubts about whether anyone would hire her for something like monster slaying, even with her skills. Still, the problem of money loomed large if she wanted to keep traveling. In times like this, she unsheathed the sword at her waist, scabbard and all, and thrust it into the ground. Standing it upright and letting go, she watched as it pointed toward the outer route. That settled it. She had no need to head to the capital. Whenever she was unsure, she had spent the past 3 months following the direction her sword indicated. This time was no different. With her decision made, Shilene made her way to the magical train. The train on the outer route passed through frontier lands and had sparse passengers. As expected, even aboard the train, Shilene drew attention, but she ignored it and took an empty seat. There, her eyes met those of a girl sitting across the aisle. Her attire immediately marked her as someone of noble birth. With refined features and beautiful blonde hair, she was undoubtedly an aristocrat. Across from her sat a woman, likely a servant, dressed in a simple outfit of black and white. Normally, Shilene would have looked away and left it at that, but something about the girl's distinct aura prompted her to speak. "Something on your mind? I just thought your clothes were unusual." "Oh, these. They're pretty common back east, but I guess they're rare around here." "It's my first time seeing them. They're quite lovely." "Really? To me, your clothes are the unusual ones. I try to pick plain things, but maybe they still stand out. I'm not from around here, so that's probably why." "Ahem, my lady." The girl seemed eager to continue the conversation, but the woman across from her spoke a single word, and though she pouted in displeasure, she fell silent. The woman glanced at Shilene and offered a slight nod of acknowledgement. Being addressed as my lady confirmed it, she was indeed of high birth. If things had gone as planned, I'd be protecting someone like her right now. It was pointless to dwell on it now. but Shilane hadn't entirely avoided imagining herself as a bodyguard. A free, aimless journey wasn't bad, but faced with financial troubles, reality had hit her hard. Traveling through unfamiliar lands was, for a 15-year-old girl, a genuine burden. Shifting her gaze from the girl, she looked out the window. A few last passengers boarded, and the magical train began to move slowly. I would have liked to at least sightsee in the capital, but money's the issue. With a quiet sigh, Shilane pondered her next steps. In rural areas, she might take on requests from people troubled by monsters and earn some pocket money. But she knew she couldn't sustain that kind of life forever. If that was the case, perhaps it was time to seriously consider settling into a steady job. My lady, regarding our plans after this. Beside her, the girl and the woman began conversing in hushed tones. Whether they had business in the countryside or intended to leave the country, Shilane neither knew nor cared. But then, HM. It was Shilane who noticed first, ahead of anyone else. 3 people were approaching from both the front and rear of the train. They masked their presence and silenced their footsteps, a clear sign that something was amiss. Chapter 3. Misunderstanding. Pursuers at a time like this. A mysterious group was approaching her on a train bound for the frontier. It was only natural for Shilane to assume they were after her. Since leaving her homeland, no one had been sent to pursue her. But that didn't mean it couldn't happen. After all, Shilane was a wanted criminal, branded a great sinner. There are other passengers here, and fighting in a place like this would be a hassle, but I suppose there's no helping it. If they were hostile, she would cut them down. That was Shilane's creed. As the group entered the same carriage, Shilane touched the hilt of the sword at her waist and rose slowly to her feet. For some reason, she couldn't sense any killing intent directed at her. Were they skilled at masking their presence, or were they truly formidable? If so, this might actually be a little fun. Luteia Halenwork, I presume. The man at the head of the group cut Shilane off mid-sentence. Wearing hoods pulled low over their faces, all 6 figures, 3 from the front and 3 from the rear, kept their identities concealed. Every pair of eyes turned toward Shilane, including those of the girl and woman seated beside her. The girl herself looked bewildered, her gaze darting around in confusion. Wait, they're not after me. I don't know who you are, but to think she'd have a little girl like you as a guard. She's got nothing to do with this. So what do you want with me? The girl Luteia stood up and responded to the man's words. Her tone was confident, and with that, Shilane pieced it together. She'd made an utterly humiliating mistake. She'd thought they were assassins sent for her, but they were targeting someone else entirely. How could this happen? A flush of embarrassment crept up her face. While Shilane squirmed inwardly, the situation pressed forward. We do have business with you. It'll be over quickly. All we need is your life. What did you say? The men drew short blades hidden in their cloaks, assuming fighting stances. As the woman at her side moved to shield Luteia, everyone in the carriage froze. What's this about? Shilane had drawn her sword and pressed its edge against the throat of the man who'd been speaking. Luteia and the woman stared at her in shock. Keeping her eyes on the men, Shilane spoke. I don't know why, but it looks like these guys are after you. So it seems. You little. I wasn't asking you, so shut it. With a slight shift of her blade, the man fell silent again. He likely understood that any reckless move at this distance would cost him his head. So, do you have a plan to get out of this? I don't understand what you mean. I mean, they got this close so easily. Don't you have anyone to protect you? Luteia went quiet at the question. The men in front of them already had weapons in hand, and Shilane had drawn her blade as well. It was sheer luck they hadn't made a move yet, but there was no telling when they might. With a small sigh, Shilane got to the point. Look, I'm kind of strapped for cash. If you need a guard, I'd be happy to take the job starting right now. A guard, just who are you? My lady, forgive me. Cutting off Luteia's words, the woman who'd moved to protect her spoke up. I am Hain Krelda in service to Lady Luteia. I'll be direct. Are you saying that if we hire you, you can resolve this situation? I won't guarantee it, but it's better than nothing, right? If you think you can handle it alone, then you don't need to hire me. Wait, Hain, I'm the one talking. You're right, very well, we'll hire you. Chapter 4. Enemies from now on. Shilane's question had been directed at Luteia, but it was the woman, Hain, who responded in her stead. It seemed Hain had a better grasp of the situation. With that exchange, Shilane turned to the man in front of her and declared, "So, as of right now, I'm your enemy." In the same instant, she swung her sword, slashing across his throat. Without pause, Shilane spun around and brought her blade down on the enemy behind her. After cutting him down, she kicked the fallen foe aside and thrust her sword forward with the momentum. Gah! The blade pierced the abdomen of another enemy at the rear. At that moment, the remaining three, who had been holding back, sprang into action. The man in front of her stepped back slightly and pulled out several knives. He must have judged that fighting from a distance would be wiser. One of the men at the rear charged straight at Shilane, while the other made a beeline for Luteia. Each had a clear role, working together to complete their task. Perhaps they had even anticipated the possibility of their vanguard being taken out. As the man in front threw his knives, Shilane leapt into the air. She jumped just high enough to avoid hitting the low ceiling of the carriage, landing atop a seat. The thrown knives veered toward his own allies, though they'd likely deflect them in time. In that split second, Shilane faced the assailant heading for Luteia. "Duck for a sec." At her words, Hain reacted instantly, moving to shield Luteia by covering her. Judging by her response, Hain seemed capable enough, likely serving as a guard herself. Kicking off the seat, Shilane slashed diagonally in a fluid motion, cutting down the enemy advancing on Luteia. W at the. Only now did the panicked voices of the other passengers in the carriage reach her ears. Barely a few seconds had passed since the fight began. Their delayed reaction was understandable. Fortunately, there were no passengers seated directly in front of or behind Luteia, so the fight could continue unimpeded. Hopping from seat to seat, Shilane swiftly beheaded the nearest assassin. With a sharp snap, the head flew cleanly off. That made 5, leaving the last one, who turned and fled the carriage with surprising speed. Normally, she'd give chase, but there could be more enemies lurking. Some of those she'd struck down might still be alive, but Shilane ignored them and called out to Luteia and Hain. "We've gotten through it for now. What's next?" "This is an emergency, so we'll stop the train." "My lady, this way." "TCH fine." Luteia wore a slightly displeased expression, but followed Hain's instructions. As they moved between the train cars, Hain promptly rang a bell positioned there. A loud clang reverberated, and the magical train shuddered. "My lady, hold on here." As instructed, Luteia gripped the handrail. Even amidst the violent shaking, Shilane stood steady, maintaining her balance. "Is that sound some kind of signal?" "It's a bell to trigger an emergency stop when there's trouble in the carriage. Right now, it's exactly that, an emergency." "Got it, so we stop and then escape from here, right?" "No, the train has Knights of the Kingdom stationed aboard, and we're still near the town. Reinforcements should arrive soon. So I just need to hold out until then." Guess it's pretty much over already." There was no guarantee more assassins weren't hiding, but she couldn't sense any nearby presence. If she stayed close and protected them a little longer, the job would be done. Who are you?" Luteia turned to Shilane with a question. Her expression betrayed suspicion. Someone suddenly fighting off assassins and saving her must have seemed unbelievable. True, in an ordinary person's shoes, this situation would be overwhelming. But fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, Shilane was no ordinary person. "Oh right, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Shilane Hazakura, just a traveler as you can see." "A traveler? Why would someone like that want to help me?" "Why, like I said earlier, I took it on as a job. My travel funds are running dry." "Travel funds? Wait, seriously, that's your reason?" Luteia still seemed unconvinced, but for Shilane, there wasn't much more to it than that. If she had to add anything. "Well, I was originally supposed to take a job protecting someone noble like you, so I kinda just wanted to try it out once, that's all." What do you mean by, whoa?" With a loud clunk, the carriage jolted violently once more. The train, which had been slowing to a stop, suddenly began accelerating again. Chapter 5. The right choice. There was no need to investigate to understand what had happened. "Looks like the whole magical train's been hijacked," Shilane said. "It seems they had more accomplices," Hain replied. "They'd go this far?" Luteia exclaimed. Even Luteia, who had maintained her composure until now, couldn't hide her growing unease. This raised a question that piqued Shilane's curiosity. What reason could there be for someone to be targeted so relentlessly? "Luteia, why are they after you? Is it because you're someone important? I'm not important at all. I was just born into a noble family, that's it, Luteia answered. Haynes' reaction suggested she knew more about the reason than Luteia did, but it was clear she had no intention of discussing it here. Well, whatever. I'm your guard, that's the job I took. We'll talk about payment later. What's the next step? We retake the magical train. That's the only option, Haynes said. The enemy likely plans to eliminate my lady along with the entire train and all the passengers with it. What? That's insane, Luteia cried. Definitely not the work of sane minds, so we take out all the enemies, is that the plan? Shilene asked. Yes, that's fine, Haynes agreed. Wait a second, who said you could decide without me? Luteia began. My lady, for now, please focus solely on your safety, Haynes urged, dropping to one knee. Her loyalty to Luteia was unmistakable, though Luteia's expression showed she wasn't entirely convinced. Fine, I get it. I'll follow for now, she relented. Thank you, my lady. Now that we're settled, Shilene said. Drawing her sword, she thrust the blade through the door of the connecting passage. On the other side stood one of the assassins who had been pursuing them. Your presence gave you away. Sliding the blade free, Shilene turned to face Luteia and Haynes. All right, since we're agreed, let's take back this magical train. I'll take the lead, follow me, okay? Yes, please. My lady, let's go. With Shilene in front, they advanced through the train. The passengers were visibly confused by the accelerating train, but there was no time to concern herself with them. The control room should be at the very front. After passing through 2 cars, a trio appeared ahead. So they usually move in groups of 3, huh? One of the assassins crouched low and charged forward. The 2 behind him likely intended to provide support, but Shilene moved faster. She leapt forward the moment he started running, swinging her blade to slash his throat. Blood sprayed, and using the momentum, Shilene hurled her sword at the 2 in the rear. Gah! Wah, what? A passenger screamed. Sorry, no time to explain, Shilene replied curtly to the frightened onlooker. The remaining assassin grabbed the sword Shilene had thrown and faced her. Throwing away your weapon. Foolish. For someone like you, this is plenty. With that, Shilene brandished a knife. It was one she'd taken from a passenger eating nearby. Don't underestimate me, you brat. The assassin charged, gripping the sword tightly. Shilene closed the distance as he swung, but the blade caught on a seat, halting his movement. Idiot, if you're not used to a weapon, that's what happens. In the confined space of the magical train, a sword wasn't something just anyone could wield freely. Shilene could handle it precisely because of her skill, but in a place like this, a shorter weapon like a dagger was far more practical. Without hesitation, she drove the knife into the assassin's throat and tore it free. In the same motion, she threw the knife at another assassin hiding behind a seat, piercing him. So it was a group of 4. Took me a second to notice. Goddamn og. Retrieving her sword, Shilene delivered the finishing blow to the assassin. The passengers were in an uproar, but as the sudden battle registered, they fell silent. Turning back, Shilene called to Luteia and Haynes, who had stayed back. Let's head straight to the control room. Just who is she? Luteia asked again. I don't know, Haynes admitted, but it seems hiring her was the right choice. Luteia's question went unanswered, but one thing was certain. Shilene's strength was extraordinary. Chapter 6. The Huntsman. At the front car of the magical train stood Welt Arwise. Accompanied by a handful of subordinates, he had completely taken control. There had been knights stationed here, but Welt had already dispatched them, their bodies tossed out of the train. That alone served as a chilling demonstration. Defiance meant death, and absolute terror instilled in all who witnessed it. Hey, I'm in the mood to wrap up this job quick and hit the tavern tonight, Welt said suddenly, breaking the silence. His subordinates flinched, a hint of panic crossing their faces at his words. The target's just one little girl. She's no match for us, the Huntsman Corps, right? Yes, that's correct. Then why the hell isn't it done yet? Worse, some of you even got taken out by another brat, who barged in and came crawling back. Thud, his fist slammed into the floor. Of the 6 he'd sent to eliminate Luteia, only one had returned alive. Welt wasn't the type to let a subordinate who failed such a simple task live. A corpse, smashed into the carriage wall and lifeless, lay as proof of that. We don't know. There was definitely just one maid guarding her, Gah. One of the subordinates answering him yelped as Welt seized his head. Just one maid, so it's 2 little girls now, and that's why it's still not done. I don't keep weaklings in my crew, you get that right. Go ah. The sound of bones creaking echoed as Welt squeezed, but he suddenly released his grip, as if noticing something. Whoops, my bad. You're one of the ones who hasn't screwed up yet. Killing you here would just be a waste. Nearly broke my own code there. The subordinate, nearly having his skull crushed, stared at Welt with terror in his eyes. He'd been spared only because he hadn't failed yet. At that moment, another subordinate returned with a report. Our report, sir. It better be good news. Well, the ones sent to take her out are being picked off one by one. Hey, if they failed, why the hell are you back here? I only want to hear it's done, nothing else. Welt cut him off and silence fell over the group. With slow, deliberate steps, he approached the reporting subordinate and brought his fist down. Boom! The entire carriage shook with the impact. A single punch carried enough force to kill effortlessly. Useless, every last one of 'em. Fine, I'll crush her myself. Clenching his blood-stained fist, Welt moved to the next carriage. Well, looks like you've already shown up. Saves me the trouble. Standing there, waiting for him, was a lone girl gripping a sword. Chapter 7. Any price. Shilene pressed forward relentlessly, cutting down every assassin sent her way until she reached the front car. There, she finally faced the man who seemed to be their leader. Hey, I was wondering why they were struggling with 2 little girls, but there's a third one. This is rich. My men got taken out by 3 little girls. So you're the leader after all. You seem like you can put up a fight, unlike the others. What are you? You're not the target or her maid. Me? I was just hired as a guard, so I took care of all the assassins you sent. You, by yourself. I'm a guard, so yeah. The man burst into loud laughter at Shilene's words. His towering frame, nearly brushing the carriage ceiling, made it feel as though the entire train trembled with his voice alone. Ha 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 ha, it's been a while since I laughed this hard. You took out all my men. Then prove it. Raising his fist, the man swung at Shilene. She dodged backward just as his fist crashed into the carriage floor with a dull crack, sending a violent tremor through the entire train. Whoa, brute strength, huh? I'm a huntsman who's killed hundreds with these fists. A huntsman, but you kill with your fists. I'd think weapons are more standard. I can use weapons too. But in a place like this, fists are the easiest, don't you think? I won't deny that. Hey, you're the leader of the ones after my life, right? What's your damn goal here? Cutting off Shilene's words, Luteia shouted from the rear of the carriage. Though she'd been holding back, she clearly wanted to know why her life was being targeted. I'm just following orders. Orders to kill you. The reason doesn't matter to me. Why? Yeah, I'm with him on that one. While Luteia was left speechless, Shilene nodded in agreement with the man. My job's just to protect her. So you, my enemy, I'll cut you down. Ha 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 ha, you've made me laugh twice now. What's your name, kid? Shilene Hazakura. Shilene huh. I'm Welt Arwise, the name of the man who's about to kill you. Burn it into your memory and die. Welt charged forward. In the cramped carriage, he came at her with enough force to destroy everything in his path. His aim was likely to kill both Shilene and Luteia in one go. Indeed, a single blow from his fists could easily crush Shilene's body. Even a graze could be fatal. Blocking it with her slender sword would be near impossible. So Shilene moved toward Welt instead. If his target was Luteia, closing the distance was the right move to fulfill her role as a guard. Naturally, Welt attacked without regard for the passengers. Shilene was the same. Her duty as a guard was solely to protect her charge. However, someone like you, I can fight while keeping the passengers safe. Wajah. Welt's roar echoed through the carriage. The moment he swung his fist down, Shilene accelerated further, slipping into his guard. In one swift motion, she severed his arm at the elbow. Though his arm was thick and tough, aiming for the gap in the bones allowed her sword to slice through effortlessly. What's more, she'd infused the blade with a trace of magic to enhance its cutting power. You little brat. How dare you? Sorry, but I don't think there's time to chat. Leaping up, Shilene swung her sword at Welt's face. At the last second, he blocked it with the palm of his remaining left arm. Thanks to the magic infusion, she couldn't fully cut through. Shilene immediately released her sword and leapt back to gain distance. I'll give you credit. You're You're strong, you took one of my arms and messed up the other, charging straight at me in that situation. That's nothing short of insane, but... Welt held up Shilene's sword triumphantly, showing it off. Without your weapon, you're just a little girl. What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying you've won? No. How much money were you planning to get from her? We haven't decided yet. I see, then I'll give her as much money as she want. Join me. Chapter 8. Because I'd rather not be resented. Shilene furrowed her brow and glared at Welt. The man had just said something outrageous. You're just hired muscle for money, right? I don't see any point in fighting you anymore. And how does that lead to me joining you? That little girl, Luteia, she's not just being targeted by me. Luteia's face twisted in shock at Welt's words. Shilene still didn't know why she was being hunted. Luteia herself seemed equally in the dark. Welt likely knew the reason, but he clearly had no intention of sharing it. Still, Shilene understood what he was getting at. So, guarding Luteia is too risky, and I should team up with you instead. Is that it? You catch on quick. You just met her and took the job on a whim, right? Teaming up with me would wrap things up faster and earn you more coin. Am I wrong? There was a hint of desperation in Welt's voice. Interesting, though he'd seemed hot-headed, he was surprisingly composed. The moment he judged the situation as unfavorable, he tried to exploit the thin bond between Shilene and her client. With a small sigh, Shilene turned on her heel, putting her back to Welt. Hain, standing beside Luteia, reacted swiftly, stepping forward to shield her. Ha 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 ha. You're quick to decide, saves me the trouble. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm only stopping because you're not worth fighting anymore. What do you say? Shilene turned back to face Welt. Having already dropped her combat stance, she continued. You don't even want to fight me anymore, right? Then get out of my sight. Do that and I won't take your life. She had no interest in an opponent who'd lost the will to fight, and she'd already gauged Welt's limits. The fact that he'd resort to such a pitiful attempt at negotiation was proof enough. You don't want to fight? You've got no weapon left. You think you've won just because you took one of my arms. Funny, you're saying the same thing I did. But yeah, I do think I've won. Negotiations are off then. Welt swung his arm, slamming Shilene's sword into the floor and stomping it until it snapped. Now you've got no weapon. Wanna trade punches with me instead? That could be fun. Don't get cocky. You think you can beat me without a weapon. Raising his remaining left arm, Welt charged at her. Shilene sighed softly again as she watched him approach. The fight was already over, yet he insisted on this pointless struggle. Taking a stance, Shilene swung her arm in place. In an instant, Welt's remaining arm was severed, flying through the air. Ha! Magic blade technique, water slash. I can use magic too, you know. Shilene had conjured a thin blade of mana, effortlessly slicing through Welt's arm. My arms. Still want to keep going. Eek W8, I can't fight anymore. Please let me go. No can do. Why? With a flick of her arm toward Welt's neck, Shilene left a clean cut, and his head rolled across the floor. You had plenty of chances, and honestly, a guy like you. If I let you go, you'd probably come back holding a grudge. Welt's body went limp, collapsing to the floor as blood pooled around him. Shilene stepped forward, unbothered. Well, guess it's just clean up from here. With that, she headed toward the front car. The battle didn't take much longer to conclude. Chapter 9. For a while, after all, with Welt's defeat, the remaining forces chose to surrender. Shilene had no intention of crossing blades with those who lacked the will to fight. She had succeeded in stopping the runaway magic train, and for the time being, her escort mission was fulfilled. The knights who were supposed to be stationed on the magic train had already been killed, a testament to the efficiency of Welt and his group, which was worthy of some praise. However, Shilene's presence was something they hadn't accounted for. For the most part, I've taken care of the nearby monsters too, Shilene said, as she returned to Luteia and Hain, who had been waiting inside the magic train. The train was currently stopped in the heart of the forest. Welt's rampage had caused severe damage to the cars, rendering it unable to move immediately. Since it would take time for reinforcement knights to arrive, Shilene had hunted down the monsters in the area, using the scent of blood to ward off others. Monsters that typically attacked humans wouldn't dare approach a place where their kind had been slain. Shilene had carefully selected such monsters for her hunt. Luteia gazed at Shilene in silence. What? Is there something on my face? Shilene asked. No, I was just thinking that you can hunt monsters too. I mean, after watching you fight earlier, I already knew you were strong, but still, Luteia replied. There don't seem to be any particularly strong monsters around here. But my weapon got destroyed, Shilene said, gesturing to the broken sword in the sheath at her waist. For hunting monsters, she had no choice but to rely on magic. I don't have a huge amount of mana, so without a weapon, I can't handle long fights, she added. Is it okay to tell me that? Luteia asked. Tell you what? Shilene tilted her head. That you have low mana, doesn't that mean it's your weakness? Hain interjected, answering Shilene's question. Hain was keeping watch, her eyes scanning outside the window rather than looking at Shilene. After the earlier battle, she seemed to have developed some trust in Shilene. There was no sign of wariness even though Shilene was standing near Luteia. It was only natural, really. If Shilene were an assassin, she'd have had plenty of opportunities to kill Luteia by now. I fight in a way that avoids using magic as much as possible because of my low mana, so it's not really a weakness. Though I do have opponents I'm not great against, Shilene explained. Oh, and I should thank you. I survived thanks to you, Luteia said. No big deal, it's my job. Just make sure you've got the payment ready, Shilene replied with a grin. I have money, I only just inherited it though, Luteia said. Inherited? Shilene echoed, curious. We'll discuss that later, Hain cut in. Hain likely knew why Luteia was being targeted. Luteia, on the other hand, still seemed unaware of the reason her life was in danger. If Shilene wanted details, Hain would be the one to ask. But Hain clearly wasn't in the mood to talk now, and Luteia shot her a slightly displeased look. You're not going to explain it to me either? Luteia asked. Our priority is ensuring your safety, milady. We don't know who might be listening, Hain replied firmly. Fair enough, Luteia conceded with a nod, and the conversation came to a close. They had no choice but to wait quietly until the knights arrived. However, there was one thing Shilene needed to confirm. Oh, by the way, how far does our escort contract extend? She asked. How far? Luteia repeated, glancing at Hain. At the very least, we'd like to continue the contract for a while longer. We'll discuss the payment, including the reward for this escort, all together, Hain answered. Got it. Then I guess we're sticking together for a bit, Shilene said. She didn't know how long it would last, but for now, it looked like her income was secure. Chapter 10. The Future of This Kingdom. The kingdom's knights arrived, and Shilene found herself released much sooner than she had expected. The reason was none other than Luteia Halenwerk herself. It turned out that Luteia was the current head of the Halenwerk family, one of the 5 great noble houses of the kingdom. Not only was she of noble birth, but she was truly a noble person in character as well. Shilene had taken care of most of the assassins, though some had managed to escape. Those who fled would be dealt with by the knights, or so they said. As a result, Luteia was officially credited with resolving the incident that had occurred on the magic train. The abundance of witnesses certainly helped her case. Some people seemed to misunderstand, thinking Shilene had been the one rampaging and slaughtering, but for those in the front car, there was no doubt she had saved their lives. Their testimony carried significant weight, to say the least. The knights mentioned they'd like to hear more from her later, but without specifying any particular destination. Shilene now found herself riding in a carriage alongside Luteia and Hain. They had returned once to the town of Azenta, where the magic train had originally departed, and after procuring a carriage there, they were now heading somewhere different from their initially planned destination. Hey, we're going in a different direction than planned, aren't we? Luteia asked. Yes, milady. Things have already veered off from the original plan, Hain replied. So you're saying we should ditch our work and run away? Luteia pressed, her tone tinged with irritation. Despite having just been targeted for her life, her insistence on prioritizing work showed an impressive strength of resolve. Shilene was quietly impressed, though she didn't show much interest in the details of their conversation, instead gazing out at the passing scenery. Her role was simple: protect Luteia from assassins at all costs. As long as that was the only condition, it wasn't too complicated a task. I suppose it's about time for an explanation, Hain said after a pause. Finally ready to talk, are you? It's absurd that I, your mistress, haven't been told anything to begin with, Luteia retorted. Things were urgent earlier. Truthfully, I intended to explain everything once we arrived, Hayne replied. Fine, then explain quickly. I've got work to attend to, you know, Luteia urged. First of all, there is no work waiting for you at the place we were originally headed today, Hayne began. What? What do you mean? Luteia asked, bewildered. Exactly as I said. It was all a fabrication, claiming there was urgent business to ensure your safety, Hayne clarified. It seemed Hayne had lied to Luteia to get her to leave. In other words, Luteia was currently being targeted for her life without knowing a single thing about why. My safety, you know why I'm being targeted, don't you? Luteia asked, her voice steady. Yes, I am aware, Hayne confirmed. Then tell me the reason. You're not planning to hide it, are you? Luteia pressed. Of course not. Let me start with the conclusion. Your life, milady, is tied to the very future of this kingdom. Chapter 11. Might as well. I don't understand a single thing you're saying, Luteia said, her expression growing even more severe in response to Hayne's words. It was a natural reaction. Being suddenly told something as grandiose as the future of this kingdom would understandably throw anyone off. Is Luteia going to become queen or something? Shilane asked. Wah, no way. Right? Luteia shot back, initially denying it firmly, but given the situation, she turned to Hayne for confirmation. Well, technically, milady does have that right, and it's not impossible. However, that would only be the case if there were no royal heirs left, Hayne explained. Then it's impossible. There's the first prince, the second prince, and the first princess too, Luteia countered. That's precisely the issue. Are you aware that the 5 great noble houses play a role in deciding the next king if succession isn't settled? Hayne asked. You mean if the king dies without naming an heir, right? Wait, no way, Luteia said, her face stiffening as realization dawned. The king hasn't passed away yet. However, it's said he's no longer in a condition to designate an heir, Hayne continued. No way. But now that you mention it, I had noticed he's been seen less often lately, Luteia murmured. Under normal circumstances, the first prince, Lord Arvent Lindworm, would be next in line. But as you're aware, milady, there are unsavory rumors about him, Hayne said. Yeah, I've heard people debating whether he's fit to be king, Luteia agreed. Shilane didn't know the details, but from their conversation, it was clear the first prince lacked the qualities to rule. However, 2 of the 5 great noble houses have declared their support for the first prince. Meanwhile, 3 houses currently back the first princess, Hayne explained. The Halenwerk family supports the princess too, which means they're targeting those who support her, Luteia exclaimed. To be precise, with the recent change in headship and the current chaos within the Halenwerk family, it's an easy target. That's likely their reasoning, Hayne replied coolly. In short, Luteia was being targeted because she held the deciding vote in the succession as the current head of the Halenwerk family. As long as she lived, the first princess would likely become the next ruler. As the head of the Halenwerk family, if something were to happen to you here, milady, there'd be no heir. The family would be deemed fallen, and it seems they've already arranged for a noble aligned with Lord Arvent to take its place among the 5, Hayne elaborated. What? So if I'm gone, they can take over and make their king? That's why they're after me, Luteia cried. Based on the information I've gathered and analyzed, yes, Hayne confirmed. But how do you even know all this? Luteia stammered. That's because I was told by the previous head, Hayne answered. By father? Luteia asked. Yes, he said, if anything happens to me, I entrust my daughter to you. He sensed that someone was targeting you, milady, and intended to buy time by getting you away from the capital. That's why I fabricated a work-related excuse to get you moving immediately, planning to explain everything once your safety was secured, Hayne explained. But the assassins had moved faster than anticipated, leading to the current situation. So if I, as the head of the Halenwerk family, declare my support for Arvent, they'll stop targeting me, right? Luteia asked. That's one option. If you clearly state that Halenwerk stands with the first prince, they'd likely consider that possibility as well, Hayne replied. I see, Luteia said thoughtfully. In other words, it was surrender. If she valued her life, she could simply give in. If they'd managed to eliminate her earlier, that would have been ideal for them. But even if they failed, the fact that numerous assassins were after her, as Welt had implied before his defeat, would pressure her into submission. An ordinary person might choose that path. Well, they must have sent assassins because they know I won't support that guy. I'm close with Flair, after all, Luteia said with a smirk. So, milady, you'll continue supporting the first princess, Lady Flair, Flair Lindworm? Hayne asked. Of course, why else did I hire a bodyguard? Speaking of which, you should have told me something this important sooner, Luteia snapped. My apologies, it was all so sudden. My first priority was securing your safety, Hayne said earnestly. In the end, whether Hayne knew more about the succession issue than Luteia did wasn't brought up. Neither Luteia nor Shilene pressed the matter, leaving it unresolved. But since Luteia hadn't chosen to flee, Shilene's role as her bodyguard was now cemented. I understand what Hayne explained. Now that I've got a grasp on the situation, I might as well hear about you too, Luteia said, turning to Shilene. Me, Shilene blinked. Yes, you. Since I've hired you as my bodyguard, I should at least know something about your background, right? Luteia insisted. My background. It's not exactly an exciting story, Shilene replied casually. You said earlier something about being set to guard someone noble, didn't you? Luteia pointed out. Oh, that, Shilene said. I'd like you to explain that in detail, Luteia pressed. Detail, huh? There's nothing special about it. The day I took my first job as a bodyguard, I went to meet them, but they were already dead. Then they pinned the blame on me, and that's it, Shilene said nonchalantly. Wait, that's not something you can just brush off with that's it, Luteia exclaimed. So, you were framed and fled? Hayne asked. Nope. I cut down the guy who framed me. I figured if they were going to brand me a murderer anyway, I might as well become one. Besides, I like fighting strong people, Shilene said with a grin. Luteia's face twisted in disbelief at Shilene's words, while Hayne stared at her in quiet shock. What? Did I say something weird? Shilene asked. Everything about that is weird, but if that's how you've survived, I guess I can see why you're so strong, Luteia said, still processing it. Good then, and since guarding you means I'll probably get to fight a bunch of strong people, I'm kinda looking forward to it, Shilene added cheerfully. I'd rather you didn't, Luteia muttered. Inside the swaying carriage, the three set out to ensure their safety first and foremost. And so, a contract was forged between the Duke's daughter, whose life was under threat, and the girl once branded a murderer. Chapter 12. The Slayer. Right beside the halted cars of the wrecked magic train, several bodies were laid out in a row. The fact, as it stood, was this. Those who had hijacked the train had been struck down by a girl serving as a noble's bodyguard. Examining these bodies, touching them as if to inspect them, was a man clad in a black suit. Beautiful, the man murmured under his breath, gazing at the wounds on the slashed corpses. I've never met a swordsman this skilled. I came here expecting to see her lying dead in a pitiful heap. But this is a delightful miscalculation, isn't it? Rising to his feet, the man broke into a pleased smile. At that moment, a knight who had noticed him approached. Hey, this area's off limits. What are you doing? The knight barked. Oh, my apologies. I seem to have gone a bit lost, the man replied smoothly. Lost? This isn't exactly a place you'd wander into on foot, the knight said skeptically. I came by carriage part of the way, but it got stuck in the mud, so I continued alone from there, the man explained. Then you'd better head back along the tracks. Monsters roam around here, it's dangerous, the knight warned. Yes, I'm well aware. But I have just one question, the man said. What's that? The knight asked. The thing is, I believe an acquaintance of mine was a passenger on this magic train. I'd like to know where they've gone, the man replied. An acquaintance, do you know their name? The knight inquired. Luteia Halenwork, the man answered. Luteia, the daughter, no, the head of the Halenwork family. If you're acquainted with her, are you a noble too? The knight asked, surprised. No, I'm not from such an illustrious lineage, the man said modestly. I see. Well, she returned to the station where the magic train departed. Wait a second. Your face, I've seen it somewhere. The knight trailed off, narrowing his eyes. Pardon me, the man said abruptly. With a sharp whoosh cutting through the air, the knight's head flew upward. The knight didn't even have time to comprehend what had happened. The last thing he saw was the blade the man had drawn from the cane in his hand. Seems I'm not entirely washed up yet. My, to think even a low-ranking knight would recognize my face, the man mused. Pulling his hat low to obscure his features, he began to walk away. He moved in the opposite direction of where the magic train had been headed. If someone were to leave from here, they'd likely backtrack and take a different route. How exciting to think I might meet a powerful swordsman, he said to himself. The man's name was Elbert Felter. Once known in the capital as the Slayer, he was an undeniable, bona fide murderer. Chapter 13. In this way, Chilene was currently in the village of Revrant. This place was considered a remote frontier within the kingdom. The roads were only partially maintained, making it inaccessible by carriage. It was a small village, peaceful and serene at the same time. There likely weren't many man-eating monsters living nearby. Even if there were, they were probably at a level the villagers could handle. Such frontier lands, where people could live comfortably, existed in multiple places across any continent. Ha! Chilene yawned softly, lying back and gazing up at the sky. With no monsters to hunt, she had no work at the moment. Luteia and Hain seemed intent on using this place as a temporary hideout, having borrowed an empty house from the village chief. One might think a bodyguard should stay close by, but with Chilene's senses, she could immediately detect any suspicious characters approaching the village. So for now, she was enjoying her free time. That said, in a frontier like this, napping during the day was about the extent of what there was to do. In the past, she might have taken on odd jobs if she found any, but now she was under contract with Luteia. Come to think of it, we haven't talked about the contract payment yet, Chilene mused aloud. As a bodyguard, she expected compensation for her services. From what she'd heard earlier, Luteia, as the head of a prominent noble family, likely had considerable wealth. But Chilene had no intention of gouging her just because she was rich. Her creed was simple. Take only the reward that matched the work done. What are you doing in a place like this? Luteia's voice came as she approached Chilene, who was still lying down. Hain was right beside her, as always, keeping watch over her mistress. Thinking about the contract payment, Chilene replied. Oh, now that you mention it, with everything going on, we haven't settled that yet. Sorry about that, Luteia said apologetically. It's fine. For now, you're covering my food here, so it's no big deal, Chilene shrugged. We should prepare a formal contract as well. I'll go get the paperwork ready, Hain said, glancing at Chilene. Her look seemed to say, take care of Luteia. There's no enemy nearby, so it's all good, Chilene assured her. Please, Hain, Luteia added. Understood. I'll be back shortly, Hain replied, heading off to prepare the documents. Left behind, Luteia sat down next to Chilene. It's a quiet place, isn't it? Luteia remarked. Yeah, I don't mind it, Chilene said. Me neither, I like places like this. They're calming and I don't have to think about unnecessary things, Luteia admitted. Unnecessary things? Chilene asked. Work, for one. Being a noble isn't exactly easy, you know. It's not like we can just sit around doing nothing, Luteia explained. Makes sense, Chilene nodded. And now I'm stuck living as a fugitive because my life's in danger, Luteia added wryly. But that's a path you chose, right? You could escape if you wanted to, Chilene pointed out. If I ran away, a lot of people might end up suffering. So fleeing is absolutely not an option, Luteia said firmly. Her tone was resolute. Chilene didn't know what had happened between Luteia and the first prince, but it was clear she despised him. Of course, it was also obvious her decision wasn't based solely on personal feelings. Likely, if the first prince became king, it would harm the kingdom, and Luteia had to stay alive to prevent that. I don't dislike people like you, Chilene said. Huh, Luteia blinked. I don't fight people who run away from the start. Battling someone with no will to fight just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, Chilene explained. I'd run if someone like you were chasing me. Even now, I'm technically fleeing for my life, Luteia countered. It's normal to run from an opponent you can't beat, but you're not just running. That's why I don't dislike you, Chilene clarified. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Luteia asked, tilting her head. I meant it as one, Chilene replied. All right, then I'll take it as one, Luteia said with a small smile. Talking alone for the first time, Chilene felt she'd gained some understanding of who Luteia was. She was someone who did what she believed was right, and Chilene saw that as the mark of a truly noble person. To think a day would come when my strength would be useful in a way like this, Chilene thought, gazing up at the sky. Chapter 14. How many have you killed? With the contract signed, Shilene officially became Luteia's bodyguard. The payment for the contract would come later, but she had already been properly compensated for her work protecting the magic train. Luteia seemed to have a decent amount of funds on hand, and Shilene had no particular complaints. Shilene visited the only workshop in the village with metalworking skills. It appeared to specialize in crafting tools for farming, run by an old man and a younger man, likely his son. What Shilene brought with her was her broken sword. "Can you fix this somehow?" she asked. "This is a katana, huh? That's gonna take some serious skill." "Hey, Pops, didn't you say you used to make swords back in the day?" the younger man called out. "Yeah," the old man grunted. He didn't stop his work, the sound of metal being hammered ringing out with a sharp clang. "Come on, take a break and have a look at it," the son urged. "Wait a sec," the old man replied gruffly. "Geez, sorry about that. Pops can't focus on anything else when he's working," the younger man said apologetically. "It's fine, I'm the one asking for a favor here. Don't you make swords?" Shilene asked the son. "Nah, I specialize in farm tools and stuff like that. Pops doesn't make weapons anymore either," he explained. "I see. Mind if I wait around?" Shilene asked. "Sure, go ahead," he said with a nod. Shilene lingered in the workshop, waiting for the old man to finish his task. For an hour, she watched him work, the rhythmic clang of metal filling the air, until finally, the old man picked up her katana. "A weapon from the eastern lands, huh?" he muttered. "Yeah, think you can fix it?" Shilene asked hopefully. "Katanas are rare around here, but I can handle it," he said. "Really?" Shilene's face lit up. "Yeah," he confirmed. Shilene felt a surge of luck. Katanas were tricky to repair, and she'd worried no one in this region could do it. The old man studied the blade for a moment before fixing Shilene with a stern glare and asking, "So, how many people have you killed with this sword?" "Huh?" Shilene blinked. "I'm asking how many you've killed," he repeated gruffly. "I don't keep track of exact numbers. Why does that matter?" she replied, confused. "I don't make weapons meant for killing anymore, and I don't fix them either," he declared. "What? Come on, just one wouldn't hurt, right?" Shilene protested. "No dice, find someone else," he said flatly. "But I came here because there is no one else," she argued. Shilene's objections fell on deaf ears. The workshop could choose its jobs, after all. The old man returned to his work without another word, leaving no room for negotiation. "I waited all that time for nothing," Shilene muttered. "Sorry about that. I'll try talking Pops into it, so mind if we hold on to it for now?" the younger man offered. He didn't seem opposed to the idea and sounded genuinely apologetic. It probably wouldn't amount to much, but there was no point in carrying around a broken sword. "All right, I'll leave it with you while I'm here," Shilene agreed. With that, she left the workshop. Money was useless if no one would fix it for her. She could still protect without a weapon, but for Shilene, magic was a trump card. Relying on it from the start could lead to running out of mana against certain foes. It'd be nice if she could at least find something else to use as a weapon, but she didn't have high hopes here. "Well, hopefully it'll work out somehow," she murmured to herself, gazing at the sky. Dark rain clouds were slowly approaching from the distance, accompanied by the low rumble of thunder. They were supposed to stay here for a while, but she'd have to keep guarding without a proper weapon. Chapter 15, something like it. Several days passed, and Luteia and Hain, staying in the village, began helping with the farming tasks. At times, they'd listen to the villagers' troubles and work together to find solutions. In just a few short days, they'd blended seamlessly into village life. As expected of a high-ranking noble, Luteia seemed to possess a natural charisma that endeared her to people. Even while hiding out, she couldn't sit still. It was simply her nature to stay active. Hain, ever at her side, was the all-capable type, supporting Luteia in every way. Shilene, meanwhile, was fishing by the river near the village. Nearby, children played, and until a moment ago, Shilene had been splashing around with them, now soaked through. In a game with wooden swords, Shilene had gone all out, dominating the kids in a display of pure skill. Some might say not to take children's games so seriously, but in a rural place like this, it was the opposite. Her movements became a source of awe for the kids, and she quickly won them over. "Unexpected," came a voice. It was Hain, approaching with a small basket in hand, filled with plants and fruits. Likely, she'd come out here on a villager's errand. What's unexpected? Shilene asked. That someone like you would get along so well with the kids, Hain replied. Is that a compliment? Shilene grinned. I'm just saying it's a side of you I didn't expect, Hain clarified. I can handle this much at least, Shilene said casually. As long as the kids are having fun, that's what matters, Hain said, her expression softening as she watched the children play. To Shilene, Hain was the one who seemed more surprising. Why are you guarding Luteia anyway? Shilene asked. What do you mean by why? I've served Milady since I was young. There's nothing strange about that, is there? Hain replied, unfazed. Okay, then let me ask this. When you hired me as a bodyguard, you could have handled it on your own, right? Shilene pressed. Hain's expression sharpened instantly, a hint of something like killing intent flickering in her eyes. Shilene shrugged nonchalantly. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, she added. Why do you think I could have managed alone? Hain asked, her tone measured. It's obvious from how you move. You're more like an assassin, aren't you? Shilene said bluntly. I see. You're sharp as expected, Hain replied. That was as good as an admission. Hain was Luteia's bodyguard, her attendant, and, at the same time, an assassin. Shilene even suspected that assassination might be her true calling. It felt a little odd that someone like her would always stay by Luteia's side as a protector. That said, there's no special reason. I serve Milady, nothing more, nothing less, Hain explained. Got it. I wasn't really asking for a reason anyway, Shilene said dismissively. Let me ask you something then. It seems you haven't found a new weapon yet. Can you still manage as a bodyguard? Hain inquired. Oh, I've got something that'll do for now, Shilene said, gesturing to an object beside her. A hatchet? Hain asked, eyeing it. Yeah, it's enough to take down guys like the ones who attack the magic train. Better than nothing, Shilene replied. There weren't any weapons in the village, Hain asked. Not any spares, it seems. I'd have settled for a decent sword, but it's tricky, Shilene admitted. Her current weapon was just a single hatchet. Her old katana had been specially crafted to channel magic easily, but farm tools like this weren't designed with such enhancements. I understand your strength, or at least I think I do. Since we're relying on you, I'll try talking to them about fixing your katana too, Hain offered. That'd be a big help. I've been going there every day, you know, Shilene said. Even after being turned down, she'd kept visiting the workshop regularly, but they still wouldn't agree to repair it. The hatchet was something she'd bought there, though they'd warned her, don't use it as a weapon. Shilene fully intended to, regardless. Well, it's been a week and no one's shown up, so we're probably fine, right? She added optimistically. Don't get complacent. You're the bodyguard, after all, Hain cautioned. Of course, if anyone comes after Luteia, I'll fight them. That's my job. Oh, got one? Shilene exclaimed as her fishing rod jerked. She yanked it up with force, pulling a large river fish from the water, and immediately began preparing it on the spot. Is this really going to be okay? Hain muttered, sighing as she watched Shilene. Some time later, a lone traveler arrived at the village. Chapter 16. Suspiciously contrived. Well, I was traveling by carriage near here when we were attacked by monsters along the way. I barely managed to escape to this place. That must have been quite an ordeal. It's a humble village, but please make yourself at home. Thank you, my escort should arrive in a few days. The conversation unfolded between the village chief and a man dressed in gentlemanly attire. The man, who introduced himself as Rid, claimed he was on his way to another destination by carriage, but was attacked by monsters and ended up here. Eavesdropping on them from behind the village chief's house were Shilene and Hain, Luteia's attendant. What do you think? Hain asked. I initially thought the timing of his arrival might point to him being an assassin, but it's hard to say. Hard to say. Exactly what it sounds like. To put it bluntly, there's no need for him to approach us under a false pretense. Isn't concealing one's identity to get close a basic tactic for assassination? I don't know about assassination basics, but out here in the middle of nowhere, there's no need to hide who you are. Instead of making your presence obvious, it'd be easier to launch a surprise attack in the dead of night, right? Depends on the situation, but I agree. His blatantly suspicious demeanor is practically screaming, I'm an assassin. It's hard to know what to make of it. Was Rid's story true, or was he an overconfident foe? If the latter, he was likely a formidable opponent. Shilene might have welcomed the challenge under normal circumstances, but unfortunately, she didn't have a proper weapon at hand. For now, if he wasn't making a move, the best course was to observe. Regardless, it's best to keep him away from Luteia and ensure he doesn't get close. Understood, and you? Keep an eye on him, right? That's the plan. At Shilene's words, Hain moved into action. She would stay by Luteia's side at all times, while Shilene kept watch over Rid. So far, Rid showed no signs of noticing Shilene. Whether that was intentional remained unclear, but if he was an enemy, the task was simple. To protect Luteia, any assassin would be cut down and killed. Rid had arranged to stay in an empty house in the village for the time being. Despite claiming to have been attacked by monsters, his appearance was remarkably pristine, hardly that of someone who had fled for their life. From his gait and mannerisms, it was clear he was no amateur. Observing Rid's movements, Shilene arrived at a single conclusion. Could he be luring me in? Despite being an assassin, Rid seemed to want her to make a move. That would explain why he'd revealed himself so conspicuously. Yet Shilene couldn't fathom his intentions. I've never dealt with someone like this before. What's the best move? For now, I'll have to consult my employer. Deciding to seek Luteia and Hain's input, Shilene left Rid's vicinity and headed toward the two. Chapter 17. Straight to the point. I'll cut to the chase. I think this Rid guy is an assassin after Luteia. I don't know why he's being so blatant about it, though. Shilene wasted no time, reporting her suspicions to Luteia and Hain upon her return. Hain nodded in agreement, but Luteia's face clouded with unease. Rid, you mean the man who went to the village chief's house earlier? Yeah, that's him. 9 out of 10, he's after your life. Hearing it put so plainly, I don't even know what to say. Being targeted for assassination wasn't exactly a normal situation for Luteia. Even in a remote village like this, her pursuers had caught up. You reached that conclusion awfully fast, considering we only just discussed him, Hain remarked. Do you have any proof? His movements definitely aren't those of an amateur. But if he were a typical assassin, I'd know for sure. It's just, know how? Luteia asked. In simple terms, if someone's a slayer, you can sense it in their vibe. I'd know because I'm the same. You're not a slayer, are you? Luteia countered, rejecting Shilene's words. But Shilene shook her head. I am a slayer. It's not about the job or anything like that, that's why I can tell. But you're saying you don't get that same feeling from this man? Hain pressed. Exactly. Honestly, he's a type I've never encountered before. So, here's the question. Assuming he's an assassin, what do we do? What do we do? Luteia echoed, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. It was a tough question, no doubt, but Shilene couldn't act solely on her own judgment. My lady, we should avoid confrontation and leave this place as soon as possible, Hain suggested. But if he's an assassin after me, he's likely killed others before. Leaving someone like that in this village feels dangerous, doesn't it? If Luteia's his target, he'll probably follow us, Shilene added. But the fact that he's so close and hasn't made a move yet is what's throwing me off. Luteia rested her chin in her hand, deep in thought. After a moment, she reached a decision. It seems like the only option is to confront him directly. My lady, that's... Hain began to protest. You're going to tell me to stop, right? But if we can't figure out his true intentions, asking him outright is the fastest way. What do you think, Shilene? If you're going, I'll protect you. I won't object. Then it's settled. Let's go see Rid. He's still at the house he's borrowing, right? Probably, Shilene replied. Shilene, with that thing you call a weapon, can you really take on an assassin? Hain asked, her tone sharp with a hint of a glare. Her frustration was understandable. Luteia was about to walk into danger, and Shilene, her supposed bodyguard, hadn't tried to stop her. But Shilene's approach to protection was different. If her charge wanted to act, she'd follow and ensure their safety. She left the decisions to Luteia. It's my job, Shilene said. Weapon or no weapon, I'll keep Luteia safe. That's reassuring, Luteia said with a smile. Let's go. And so, Luteia, the very target of a presumed assassin, decided to confront Rid directly to uncover his true motives. Chapter 18. Confession. That's right, I'm an assassin hired to kill Luteia Halenwork. Rid spilled the truth with startling ease the moment they confronted him. He lounged in a chair, sipping tea with an air of elegance. Hain reacted instantly, stepping protectively in front of Luteia. "Well, I didn't expect you to come so soon," Rid said. "If you're after me, why go through all this roundabout nonsense?" Luteia demanded, her tone resolute despite the danger. She had chosen to face him head-on, and her question came the moment they were invited inside, prompting his blunt confession. "To gauge how many people you have with you," Rid replied. "Though, from the presence around, it seems it's just you three girls." He flicked his gaze toward Shilene. No trace of killing intent emanated from him, yet his skill was undeniable. "And one more thing. My employer instructed me to bring you back alive if you surrender. That's why I didn't attack outright." "Surrender?" Luteia echoed, incredulous. The first assassin had come for her life without hesitation. This second one offered surrender, a warning perhaps that refusal meant a lifetime of being hunted. Success would be ideal for them, failure would still rattle her. And Rid, accepting such a job, oozed confidence. "I'll wait 3 days for your answer. No need to worry." "I'm not surrendering," Luteia cut in, her voice sharp and unwavering. "Oh," Rid raised an eyebrow. "Go back to your employer and tell them this. People like you are unfit to serve a king." She hadn't mentioned the employer, but her guess seemed spot on. Rid chuckled softly at her words. "You're quite the woman, worth killing, just like your mother." "What?" Luteia's calm shattered. "What did you just say?" she demanded. "I said you're just like your mother, the only target I ever failed to kill." Shock rippled across Luteia's face, mirrored by Hain's. Hain spoke first. "I don't know how you know my lady's mother, but—" "My mother died of illness," Luteia interrupted, her voice trembling as a memory surfaced. "She fell ill suddenly, but she had bandages wrapped around her body. Ah, the wound I gave her became fatal after all." "That's good too." Luteia moved first, swinging a fist at Rid with all her might. He reacted swiftly, grabbing a cane from the table and drawing a hidden blade, aiming for her neck. Shilene intervened, throwing herself in front of Luteia. The blade stopped inches from Luteia's throat, piercing Shilene's left shoulder. She gripped the blade with her hand, blood seeping through her fingers. A wrong move could sever them. "Shilene?" Luteia gasped. "Jumping in like that is basically throwing your life away, you know," Shilene said, shooting Luteia a sidelong glance with a mix of exasperation and resolve. Rid grinned, clearly amused. "So it was you, the one who left that beautiful corpse on the magic train." "Don't know about beautiful, but yeah, I killed them," Shilene admitted. "This just got twice as fun. Killing Luteia and fighting you." With a slick motion, Rid yanked the blade from Shilene's shoulder. She grimaced, eyeing him warily. "Feeling cocky? You could have taken a finger or two if you twisted that sword. Why ruin a fight with a worthy opponent? You're already at a disadvantage with that wound. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Elbert Felter, a name you two know well, I presume." He wasn't wrong. The injury had rendered Shilene's left arm useless. She'd thrown herself in knowing her makeshift machete couldn't parry his sword. Rid no, Elbert stood, bowing theatrically. "Elbert, the infamous slayer from the capital," Hain said, her voice low. "I thought you were dead. I'm used to faking things. Even out here, my real name would give me away instantly. Coming back to this kingdom after so long, I'm glad it's proving entertaining." Elbert raised his sword, ready to fight. Shilene's hand brushed the machete at her waist. "Shilene, Luteia's voice broke, guilt etching her face. She blamed herself. Shilene didn't have time to dwell on it. Her focus was on the man before her, but she spared Luteia a question. "I don't know the details. Your mother, this guy, whatever their deal is, I don't care. But Luteia, what do you want to do with him?" Luteia's eyes burned with resolve. "Please, cut him down. Consider it done." Shilene took her stance and the battle began. Chapter 19. No backing down. Shilene kicked a nearby table toward Elbert. The spinning table was sliced cleanly in two before his eyes. Using the distraction, she drew the machete from her waist and lunged, but Elbert reacted instantly, forcing her to leap back and create distance. "Hain, no need to tell me." At Shilene's call, Hain swiftly ushered Luteia out of the room. Now it was one-on-one, but the odds were heavily against Shilene. Her machete was a mere farming tool, ill-suited for channeling magic. If she clashed directly with Elbert, the blade would likely shatter. Her only option was to dodge and wait for an opening. With her left arm barely functional, this was, without exaggeration, the greatest crisis of her life. A bit disappointing, Elbert remarked. What is? Your injury, your weapon, hardly in peak condition. Yet you show no sign of backing down. My employer wants you dead. I wouldn't mind a rematch later, you know. I'd love to face you at your best, that's part of it. You just wait around. This village seems like a fine place to pass the time. Pass the time? Of course, cutting people down is my hobby. He was implying he'd amuse himself by slaughtering villagers while Shilane prepared. That alone made retreat unthinkable. You're a true slayer, Shilane said. That's what felt off. Meaning? Just what I said. You feel no guilt killing, like it's natural. That's why you barely give off killing intent, and why I couldn't pin you as an assassin at first. That might be true. For me, killing is a hobby, a part of daily life, like washing your face in the morning. I cut someone down to gauge my mood for the day, it's routine. To Shilane, Elbert was a monster. Left unchecked, there was no telling what he'd do. He had to be stopped here and now. She gripped her machete and crouched low. No backing down then, pity. Don't worry, I'll give you what you want, I'll cut you down. They moved almost simultaneously. As Elbert swung his sword, Shilane dodged with nimble steps. A direct clash would spell her defeat. She tested him with a magical blade, but Elbert deflected it effortlessly. His sword was likely infused with magic too. Unlike the previous assassin, his strength was the real deal. Ranged magic was blocked, and close combat was too risky. No way out, huh? Shilane reached her conclusion quickly. Continuing this fight would lead to a slow, inevitable loss. No matter her skill, her injury was severe, and winning without a proper weapon was near impossible. Yet she didn't consider retreat for a moment. If there was no path to victory now, she'd carve one in battle. Waiting was a strategy too. Dodging Elbert's next strike, she crashed through a window and bolted outside. Elbert pursued without hesitation. In the distance, she spotted Luteia and Hain, but instead of joining them, she sprinted toward an empty forest. Running away, Elbert taunted. Just changing the stage. You want a real fight, don't you? Hey, quite the tempting offer. Fine, I'll bite. Elbert chased after her. A wide-open forest with plenty to obstruct his view, that was her best shot at creating an opening. Chapter 20. No further. Stepping into the forest, Shilane halted briefly. Elbert caught up without delay, raising his sword once more. So, this is where we can fight to our heart's content, yes. Something like that. She didn't fully agree with to our heart's content. In an open field, exploiting Elbert's openings would be near impossible. Here, with trees obstructing his view, she had a sliver of a chance. Very well, from here I'll get serious. In an instant, Elbert closed the distance. Shilane nearly raised her machete to block, but knew it would be cleaved in two. She leapt backward, sprinting up a massive tree behind her. Elbert swung, unleashing a magic-charged slash that tore through surrounding trees like a visible gust. The tree Shilane scaled was no exception. As it trembled, she vaulted off, vanishing deeper into the forest. Hide-and-seek now, I'd rather cross blades with you. Cross blades, he says. Shilane was confident in her swordsmanship. With a proper blade, she wouldn't resort to this evasive game. But having chosen to fight, a lack of a weapon was no excuse. She had to do whatever it took to win. Darting through the forest, she unleashed two spells. Magic blade art. Silent breeze. A soundless, invisible blade of magic, lacking the power to fell trees but lethal enough to kill if it hit. The problem was landing it. Impressive, Elbert remarked. Weaving through these trees to strike directly. You're strong, no doubt. Petty tricks wouldn't faze him. Shilane's magic reserves were lower than most, so she developed magic blade arts to compensate, simple techniques that shaped magic into thin, projectile blades. Her earlier water slice was ideal for close-range foes, while Silent Breeze worked at a distance. She could unleash a stronger spell to finish Elbert, but it would drain her reserves. Missing would leave her defenseless. Fighting head-on would be easier, but that's not an option. She half-wished a weapon would just fall from the sky, a desperate thought. Don't stray too far now. Elbert appeared directly ahead. His cane-concealed sword, though slender, was clearly enchanted to channel magic, making its size irrelevant. A single swing could rend the earth. Shilane dove right to dodge, but Elbert followed with a sweeping slash. She ducked, and the trees behind her were sliced apart. Seizing the moment, she charged at him. Oh. Elbert let out an intrigued sound. As he raised his sword, Shilene accelerated. They traded blows, her machete grazed his side while his blade struck her leg. She slid across the ground, barely maintaining balance to face him. Now you can't escape, Elbert said. You're mistaken if you think I'm running. My apologies. Indeed, charging head-on to exploit a fleeting gap isn't the act of someone fleeing, and I've taken a hit for it. Blood seeped from Elbert's side. Shilene's wound, however, was deeper. Keeping her distance from him was growing harder. I've enjoyed this, brief as it was. Already claiming victory. You and that last guy, overconfidence is a trend. You know you're out of moves. Your condition isn't ideal, and you squandered the chance I offered. A girl like you, ignoring such an opportunity, won't provide much more entertainment. You talk big. He wasn't wrong. She had no moves left, and she'd rejected his offer. But she hadn't fought to lose or to accept his terms. If I die here, it just means that's all I amounted to. Whatever the outcome, the end was near. Chapter 21. I have to deliver it. After Shilene and Elbert vanished into the forest, Luteia stood frozen, unable to do anything but stare after them. Shilene. She took a step toward the forest, but Hain grabbed her arm. My lady, now's our chance. Our chance? While she's holding him off, we need to hide. At worst, we prepare to leave this village. Are you serious? You're telling me to abandon Shilene? She doesn't even have a proper weapon. Do you forget what a bodyguard is for? She's just a hired hand paid to protect you. Nothing more. Luteia faltered, words catching in her throat. Hain was right, Shilene was merely a mercenary. That should have been the end of it, but I told her to come with us. It would have been fine if I just said that. Instead, I let my emotions take over and asked her to fight. Do you really think that man would let us go? He's a true murderer. Even Luteia knew of Elbert. As a child, she'd heard his name often, the most infamous slayer in the capital, a figure everyone recognized. That such a man was alive, standing before Shilene, aiming for her life, most would have been paralyzed with fear, fleeing at the first chance. But Luteia was different. All the more reason I can't run. If we leave him here, who's to say he won't harm the villagers? My duty is to protect you, my lady, nothing else. What's that supposed to mean? You're saying it's fine if the people here get hurt. Hey, what's with all the shouting? A man approached the arguing pair. A young craftsman from the village workshop, someone Luteia and Hain had visited a few times. Why are you here? Hain asked. I was heading to find Shilene for something, but then I heard a crazy noise. Came over and saw you two fighting. For Shilene, Luteia's gaze dropped to the sheathed sword in his hand. Is that? Huh? Oh yeah, I was bringing this to her. You mean you fixed it? Hain asked, astonished. The man nodded. Kids often hang out at the old man's place, and they'd talk about Shilene a lot, apparently. At first he was all, I don't fix weapons meant to kill. But I guess he needed to know her character first. Shilene had bonded with the village children. Their voices had swayed the craftsman more than Luteia or Hain's requests ever could. True, Shilene had killed, Luteia had witnessed it. But on the magic train, she'd also protected the other passengers. She wasn't like that slayer from before. That's it, I'll take it, Luteia declared. Whoa, all right, take care of it. The old man said no payments needed. Guess he felt bad for refusing at first. Thank you. My lady, wait. Luteia started to run, but Hain grabbed her again. This time, Luteia shook her off and sprinted forward. My lady. Hain's words were logical, and Luteia knew it. Shilene was just a bodyguard, and she'd warned Luteia not to act recklessly. Heading to where they were fighting could get her killed. Yet Luteia couldn't stay still, not when Shilene was fighting because of her wish. I have to deliver it. Clutching Shilene's sword tightly, Luteia disappeared into the forest. Chapter 22. Supposed to be her limit. What is this girl? Elbert was inwardly rattled. The wound he'd dealt her wasn't shallow by any means. With her left shoulder pierced, she should have been too racked with pain to focus on fighting. Her weapon was inadequate, and he just slashed her leg deeply. The fight should have been over, yet here he was, still locked in combat with Shilene. His strikes landed, but she dodged at the last second for it to be deep, spilling blood, yet pressing forward to take his life. This tenacity, it's beyond my expectations. To Elbert, victory was already his. He wanted to finish Shilene quickly and move on to his true target, Luteia. The longer Shilene stalled, the higher the chance Luteia would escape. If that happened, another assassin might claim her life, an outcome Elbert couldn't tolerate. "Can't you just give up already? You're at your limit," he snapped. "Not until I cut you down." Shilene swung her machete upward, and Elbert countered. His blade clipped the machete's tip, shortening it, but Shilene didn't stop, following through with the swing. For the first time, Elbert stepped back. Shilene didn't pursue, halting in place. Huff. She was breathing heavily, her clothes stained red from worsening blood loss. Her steps seemed unsteady. Elbert decided that rather than fighting head-on, letting her bleed out would be smarter. "A wounded beast is a fearsome thing," he remarked, "to push this far. Don't call me a beast. But you are one. Your movements, charging in despite having no way to properly defend, it's terrifying." That sounded genuine. "What?" Shilene exhaled deeply, slowly taking a stance. "You really think I'm terrifying?" Elbert's eyes narrowed. This was provocation. Giving in to anger would play into her hands. He was afraid of her. Despite his overwhelming advantage, he felt cornered, and it irritated him. Still, he forced himself to stay calm. He'd lived a life of killing and deception. There was still too much fun to be had. He couldn't stumble here. "Heck, say what you want. No matter how you struggle, you can't beat me." "You're right. At this rate, I might pass out from blood loss, just like you planned." Her taunting tone made Elbert's eyes widen. "How did you know that's my plan? You were chasing me before, but now you're pulling back a bit. You're not like me." "How so?" "You don't love fighting strong opponents. You're just a freak who enjoys killing." "Honestly, I'm sick of fighting you." "Don't get cocky, you half-dead brat." Her words struck a nerve, roughening his tone. Still, he kept his cool, resisting the urge to charge. Shilene's body swayed, losing balance. She was at her limit. Elbert smirked, certain of victory. "Shilene." A voice cut through. Luteia appeared behind Shilene, clutching a sheathed sword, unmistakably Shilene's. Shilene glanced her way. "Now." Elbert swung, aiming a magic-charged slash to cut through both Shilene and Luteia. Magic blade art. Rupture. But as Shilene swung her arm, a massive explosion tore into the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Elbert had underestimated her magic's power. She could wield high-impact spells. His vision obscured as he retreated again. "Damn it." Amid falling pebbles, he saw Shilene gripping the sword. "Sorry to keep you waiting," she said, drawing the blade and leveling it at him. "Now I can finally cut you down." Chapter 23. A fitting end. Shilene drew the sword Luteia had brought, facing Elbert. A glance at Luteia's heaving breaths told her she'd run here with everything she had. "Coming to a battlefield when you're the one I'm supposed to protect? You're out of your mind." Ha, sorry. Am I in the way?" "No, I owe you one. With this, I won't lose." "Such grand confidence," Elbert interjected. "You're hardly one to talk about recklessness." "You'll see soon enough." Shilene tightened her grip on the hilt. Elbert pulled his arm back, ready to meet her. Blood loss was severe, her magic nearly depleted. Now was the moment to end it. They moved almost simultaneously. Elbert unleashed a massive magic slash, aimed at both Shilene and Luteia behind her. Shilene charged straight on, infusing her blade with magic to meet the attack head-on. Elbert rushed forward, swinging his sword down, but Shilene deflected it, letting the blade slide off hers. What? She'd studied his swordplay closely. With a proper blade, his technique was no longer a threat. Parrying was effortless. In one fluid motion, she severed his right arm at the elbow. GH. Circling behind him, she slashed both his knees, then cut off his remaining left arm. With a kick, she sent the limbless Elbert sprawling. Gazahe. Ignoring his writhing, blood-soaked form, Shilene picked up the sword still clutched in his severed right hand and approached. "This can't be. I told you you'd see. Damn it, finish it. This sloppy cut, it's not a death worthy of me. You want to die pretty, don't you? You went on about beautiful corpses. You cut me like this on purpose." "Yep." Without a flicker of emotion, Shilene drove Elbert's own sword into his abdomen. "Ogsga." Turning her back on his agony, she started to walk away. "What? Wait, at least kill me. Someone like you doesn't deserve a clean end with a sliced throat." "What?" "Don't worry, you won't survive this. You won't suffer too long either. But with monsters around here, drawn to the blood, it won't be an easy death." Already, the presence of beasts stirred nearby, likely lured by the scent. Don't screw with me. Do you know how many I've killed? I don't deserve this end. I should go out in a blaze where everyone can see. This is plenty for you, a fitting end. Elbert let out a wordless scream, but Shilene ignored him, heading toward Luteia. Seeing Elbert's state, Luteia gasped. Shilene took her hand, pulling her along. Shilene. I don't know if what he said was true. Either way, the past can't be changed, so I gave that scum what he deserved. But you probably shouldn't see any more. Let him suffer and die out of sight, that's what he'd hate most. For me. Nah, I did it on my own. Don't waste your thoughts on a guy like that, Luteia. Shilene wasn't good with comforting words. All she could say was to forget that monster. Holding Luteia's hand, she couldn't see her face, but, thank you. The quiet words reached her ears. Like I said before, I'm the one who should be thanking you. With a faint smile, Shilene answered. Chapter 24. Even if the whole world. Shilene's injuries were severe, yet she remained remarkably optimistic. For a mercenary like her, wounds like these were just part of the job, a minor inconvenience, nothing more. Stripped of her clothes, Shilene now lay on a bed receiving treatment. The small village lacked a proper doctor, so it was none other than Luteia tending to her. Luteia held both hands over Shilene's wounds, channeling a warm, emerald-green light of magical energy into them. Healing magic, it seemed Luteia was proficient in advanced spellcraft. In the East, only high-ranking folks can wield magic like that, Shilene remarked. Oh, wait, guess that makes sense since you're a noble, right? I've been studying since I was a child. Nobles are often targeted, so it's necessary. I never imagined I'd be using it to heal someone else, though. This magic is tricky to master, so I haven't learned much else. Luteia. Figures. Still, the pains eased up a lot. There are still plenty of wounds left. The one on your shoulder went clean through, it'll probably remain as scar, and some pain might linger. Can't be helped, doesn't bother me. You're a girl, Shilene. You should care a little. Haha, you say the funniest things, Luteia. It's not a joke. Despite her exasperation, Luteia continued her treatment. The magic must have been taxing, yet she focused intently, healing Shilene's wounds one by one. Beyond the deep gash in her shoulder, there were cuts on her arms, sides, and legs, scars of a brutal fight. The shoulder wound took priority due to its severity, but it was slow to mend. Still, it couldn't be ignored. If they could just stabilize it, the leg injury, while significant, wasn't as dire. Considering Shilene hadn't been at her best during her clash with Elbert, her performance had been nothing short of remarkable. In truth, with her blade in hand, Shilene had dispatched Elbert with ease as if he were no threat at all. You're really something, you know, Luteia said. Oh, a guy like that. Give me a sword, and I'll take him down no problem. It's not just that, you can keep fighting, even with injuries like these. Getting hurt's just part of the deal, isn't it? Shilene tilted her head, looking at Luteia with a puzzled expression. Part of the deal, Luteia echoed. You can't just brush off injuries this serious. I don't plan to get hurt, obviously, but in a fight, wounds happen, sometimes worse. You could even die. If you're not ready for that, you'll hesitate, and that's what gets you killed. Her words carried a weight far beyond what one would expect from a 15-year-old girl. To Shilene, this was simple truth. No one enters a fight planning to die, but she fought with the resolve to leave no regrets, even if it meant her end. Whatever the odds, once she committed to a battle, she fought to win. If death came instead, that was merely her limit, nothing more, nothing less. You're no different, Luteia, Shilene added. You risked your life to bring me my sword, didn't you? That was my responsibility. Responsibility or not, most people wouldn't step into a place crawling with monsters and assassins out to kill them. Normal people would run the other way. The fact that you did it, that's strength too in my book. Shilene's strength lay in her raw combat prowess and unbreakable spirit. But to her, Luteia's courage, a different kind entirely, was just as remarkable. It's complicated, hearing that from you, Luteia said softly. I'm giving you a compliment, just take it. Fine, Luteia said with a small smile. The shoulder's done, next your leg. Got it. Shilene casually lifted the hem of her skirt-like garment to expose the wound. Luteia's expression tightened. You really need to have some sense of modesty, she scolded. What? I'm not wearing anything embarrassing. Unless You're the type who gets flustered seeing a girl's underwear. Of course not, Luteia snapped. Honestly. Haha, kidding, kidding. Relax. Even as she fumed, Luteia didn't pause her healing. Noticing her breathing grow heavier, Shilane spoke up. Why don't you take a break? You've gotta be wiped. I'll rest after I've handled the worst of it. Always so serious. I won't stop you. Then, you won't stop me from what I'm about to say either. Luteia's sudden shift caught Shilane off guard. Depends on what it is. If it's something reckless, like throwing your life away. I won't do that. And I'm sorry about before. It's fine, I don't care. So what's this about? Luteia hesitated, then spoke firmly. Hayne would probably object, but I don't think we can keep running like this, hiding in the frontier. It's not enough. Shilane understood immediately what Luteia meant. She wasn't fleeing anymore. She was tired of merely surviving, of staying one step ahead. I'm going back to the capital, Luteia declared. If I have to return eventually, it's better to do it sooner rather than later. Sounds good to me. Means we take the fight to them, right? It's not about fighting, exactly, but things might get even more dangerous. So if you want out, now's the time too. As long as you pay me, I'll protect you, Shilane cut in, even if the whole world turns against us. Luteia gave a wry smile. Save words like that for when they really matter. But Shilane meant every syllable. For her, being a bodyguard demanded that kind of resolve. If her employer, Luteia, chose a path, she'd follow, no matter the destination. Then it's a deal, Luteia said. Leave it to me, princess. With a nod, they sealed their renewed contract. Their next destination, the capital, teeming with unknown enemies. Chapter 25. The Wrong King. The night air in the capital was thick with intrigue, and Arvent Lindworm's gaze lingered on the stars as if they held answers to his ambitions. His lips curled into a faint smirk, undeterred by the robed man's report. Coming to the capital, is she? Arvent mused, his voice dripping with mockery. Luteia's grown bolder than I thought. Or perhaps more foolish. The robed figure shifted slightly, his face obscured by the hood. Shall we intercept her before she arrives? The roads are perilous, and accidents are easily arranged. Arvent waved a dismissive hand. No. Let her come. If she's walking into the lion's den, I'd rather watch her squirm up close. Besides, it saves us the trouble of hunting her down. The man hesitated. And the swordswoman, the one who felled Elbert. She's no ordinary spellsword. At this, Arvent's smirk faltered, if only for a moment. A nuisance, nothing more. Hire more blades. Better ones. If she's as good as you claim, then I'll have her head as a trophy when this is over. The robed man bowed and melted back into the shadows, leaving Arvent alone with his thoughts. His eyes drifted to the towering spires of the palace, symbols of the power he craved. Luteia was a means to an end, a stepping stone to the throne. Her defiance only made her elimination more satisfying. Section. Meanwhile, far from the capital's scheming heart, Shilane and Luteia traveled under the cover of dusk. The road to the Lindworm Kingdom's capital stretched before them, winding through dense forests and treacherous ravines. Hayne rode ahead, scouting for threats, while Shilane walked beside Luteia's modest carriage, her sword sheathed but her senses sharp. You're awfully quiet, Shilane said, glancing at Luteia, who sat staring out the carriage window. Second thoughts about storming the capital. Luteia shook her head, though her expression was taut. No, it's the only way. If I keep running, they'll never stop chasing me. But I can't help wondering how many are waiting for us there. Doesn't matter how many, Shilane replied with a grin. Point me at 'em and I'll cut through, simple as that. You make it sound so easy. Luteia managed a faint smile. It is when you don't overthink it. Whoever's after you, they're not ready for us. Her confidence was infectious, but Luteia's thoughts lingered on the capital's dangers. The royal court was a nest of vipers, and Arvent, her former betrothed, was the most venomous of all. She hadn't told Shilane everything about him, not yet. Some truths were too heavy to share on a dusty road. Section. Back in the capital, Arvent summoned his most trusted allies to a clandestine meeting in the palace's undercroft. Torchlight flickered across the faces of mercenaries, nobles, and a towering figure clad in black armor, the knight Arvent had boasted of, known only as the Iron Fang. His presence alone silenced the room. The girl's coming to us, Arvent announced, pacing before the group. She thinks she can reclaim her place, but she'll find nothing but a grave. I want her watched, cornered, and, if necessary, broken. But alive for now. I'd like to see her beg before the end. A noble, one of the two houses sworn to Arvent, leaned forward. And the swordswoman? Reports say she's unnatural, faster than any blade has a right to be. The Iron Fang's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Leave her to me, no blade outshines mine. Arvent clapped his hands, delighted. Perfect. Let Luteia march to her doom, and let her precious guard learn what it means to defy a king. As the meeting adjourned, whispers of betrayal and greed echoed in the Undercroft. Arvent's allies were loyal only to their own desires, bound by promises of wealth and power. But none saw the cracks in their master's plan, or the fire in the eyes of a wanderer who fought not for gold, but for something far stronger. Chapter 26. Lawrence Mountain Range. 1 week later, near the Lawrence Mountain Range, Shilene was traveling alongside Luteia and her group. Thanks to Luteia's healing, Shilene's injuries had improved considerably. However, the real issue was the relentless attacks from assassins. 5 days ago, and again 2 days ago, they had been ambushed twice. Though the assailants weren't on Elbert's level, they seemed to know Luteia's whereabouts with uncanny precision. Ideally, they would have headed straight for the royal capital, but circumstances forced them to take a detour. Now, they had abandoned the carriage and were attempting to cross the mountains on foot. Surely we won't be attacked in a place like this, right? Luteia said, catching her breath as she scanned their surroundings. This was hardly a path suited for a noble lady, but she had swapped her usual attire for sturdy mountain boots and pressed on without complaint. Hain led the way, showing no signs of fatigue. Likely not, she replied to Luteia, though I cannot fathom how the enemy keeps tracking our movements. Shilene brought up the rear. She was accustomed to mountain trails like these, a natural consequence of her training, which had included secluded mountain retreats to hone her swordsmanship. The primary danger in the mountains was monsters. The farther one strayed from civilization, the greater the chance of encountering powerful beasts. It was only natural, given they were traversing untamed paths. The second danger was the weather. A downpour on an unmaintained trail could spell trouble. Shilene might manage, but what about Luteia? Exhausted and unaccustomed to the mountains, she could easily collapse if they weren't careful. Thus, while keeping Luteia's stamina in mind, the group needed to cross the range as quickly as possible. If we could just take the magic train back to the capital, we wouldn't have to go through all this, Luteia sighed. Given the previous attacks, conspicuous methods of travel are too risky, Hain responded. I know, I was just saying, Luteia muttered. If you're tired, maybe we should stop for a break, Shilene suggested. Hain halted at the suggestion. A break? There's nowhere in these mountains to rest properly. A cave could work for some rest, Shilene countered. That risks attracting monsters, Hain pointed out. I'm here, so it'll be fine, Shilene said confidently. While Shilene agreed in principle that they should move quickly, she also knew there were limits to endurance. Judging by Luteia's current state, even a short rest would do her good. We don't seem to see eye to eye, do we? Hain said, her tone cool. Guess not, Shilene replied lightly. Shilene, I'm fine, Luteia interjected. The air grew slightly tense, though neither Shilene nor Hain seemed particularly bothered by it. Luteia, stepping in to mediate, was predictably stubborn. She'd been putting on a brave front for days now, and since Luteia was the one hiring her, Shilene had generally followed her lead. But this time, no, we should rest here, Shilene insisted, standing firm. Chapter 27. She's suspicious. Judging by Luteia's condition, pushing her any further would be unwise. Yet, for some reason, Hain showed no intention of stopping. Why are you in such a hurry? Shilene asked. It's obvious, isn't it? Our destination is the royal capital. The longer we take with these detours, the more time slips away, Hain replied. Funny, considering you were so against going to the capital in the first place, Shilene shot back. When Luteia had declared her intent to head to the royal capital, Hain had vehemently opposed it. Though she eventually claimed to respect Luteia's decision, it was hard to believe she'd now be the one rushing them along, especially when it meant pushing her mistress to the brink. If we're going, we should move as quickly as possible. It's for Lady Luteia's safety, Hain said. That's what I'm saying, Shilene started. I am fine, really? Look, Luteia interrupted, cutting off the brewing argument. She put on a brave front, but it was clear to anyone that continuing the mountain crossing in her state would be too much. Hain, of all people, should have seen that, which was why Shilene fixed her with a sharp glare and said, "What's the plan?" "She's definitely going to collapse if we keep this up." Hain sighed. "Fine, stay by Lady Luteia's side. I'll find a safe place to rest." "Sounds good, I'll leave it to you," Shilene replied. "Hain, wait," Luteia called out. "My apologies, Lady Luteia," Hain said, offering a quick bow before walking off without pause. As Luteia stood there, stunned, Shilene plopped down onto a nearby fallen log. "You should rest too. You're not exactly bursting with stamina." "I told you I'm fine," Luteia said, her tone tinged with defiance. Still, she sat down as Shilene suggested. "You're not fine," Shilene said bluntly. "You're out of breath, and if you keep going like this, you could twist an ankle or worse. If that happens, crossing these mountains gets even harder, and if we're attacked by enemies, the risk skyrockets." "Maybe you're right," Luteia admitted, her usual bravado softening as she considered Shilene's words. It was obvious Luteia was overexerting herself. If she kept pushing, she'd hit her limits soon enough. She was a noble's daughter, after all. She might have trained in swordsmanship or other disciplines, but trudging through uncharted mountain paths was far beyond her experience. And then there was Hain, her loyal attendant, who hadn't shown a single sign of fatigue. That alone was unusual. At the same time, Shilene had a hunch about what Hain might be thinking. "So, Hain's been choosing our routes, right? Don't you think we're taking an awful lot of detours?" Shilene asked. "Well, yes, she's been cautious to avoid crowded areas, but what's your point?" Luteia replied. Never mind." "Forget I said anything," Shilene said, waving it off. "Come on, now you're just making me curious," Luteia protested. Saying more could easily strain things with Luteia. But Shilene was fairly certain her suspicions were correct, and she probably ought to share them. "Look, I'm just guessing here, but I think Hain's deliberately pushing you too hard," Shilene said. "Deliberately? What do you mean by that?" Luteia asked, her voice wary. "For one, she doesn't want you going to the capital. That's the first thing. But there's something else that bothers me, how the enemy keeps showing up exactly where we're headed." Luteia's expression darkened at Shilene's words. As expected, this theory wasn't sitting well with her. Are you saying you suspect Hain?" Luteia asked, her voice tight. Shilene didn't answer right away. She weighed her words, wondering how, or if she should respond. "Hain's hiding something," she said at last. "Obviously, you trust her way more than you trust me, and that's fine. But as your bodyguard, I'm saying it, she's suspicious. Hain is my ally. She's been by my side forever," Luteia said firmly. Shilene hadn't expected Luteia to agree with her, but the response wasn't as heated as she'd braced for. If "she's my ally" was Luteia's final word on the matter, Shilene wasn't going to push further. Chapter 28. What should I do? Hain had left Luteia's side and was searching alone for a place to rest. Even in the depths of the forest, Shilene was right. There were ways to let an exhausted Luteia recover. Hain paused, scanning her surroundings. Luteia was probably fine, but the real concern was Shilene. Confirming that she hadn't followed, Hain spoke. "Isn't it about time you showed yourself?" "So you noticed," came the reply. Emerging from the shadows of the trees was a young man. He wore a hooded robe, his face obscured by the deep cowl, but Hain knew exactly who he was. "Keeping watch over Lady Luteia is supposed to be my job." "Why are you here?" Hain demanded. "Oi, that's a pretty cold attitude, don't you think? I went out of my way to come to a backwater like this," the young man said, his tone teasing. "Get to the point," Hain snapped, her sharp gaze betraying a flicker of irritation. The young man shrugged. "Man, you're still no fun. Fine, you're right, I wouldn't be here without a reason. Hain, your role monitoring Luteia Halen work. It's over." "Over?" Hain's expression hardened at his words. "Exactly what it sounds like. They've decided Luteia's not worth keeping tabs on anymore," he said. "She's still alive," Hain countered. "As long as Lady Luteia lives, the succession to the throne remains undecided. That's the thing, the higher-ups have made their choice. The first prince will be king. The first princess and Luteia, they're out. I'm just the messenger." The young man's words were clear. Luteia was no longer needed. Hain fought to keep her composure, refusing to unravel as she tried to argue for Luteia's worth. Lady Luteia, she's beloved by the people. She's someone who deserves to live. Preaching to me won't change a thing, the young man said dismissively. And what's with still calling her lady? Come on, Hayne. You were sent to infiltrate the Halenwork family from the start. Don't tell me, after all these years, you've actually grown attached. That's impossible, Hayne said, her voice flat. She denied it outright. If she'd admitted otherwise, the young man would likely deem her a liability and eliminate her on the spot. A fight might be manageable, but if he escaped and learned of the bond Hayne felt toward Luteia, the consequences would be dire. So she held back, unable to press further. Anyway, that's the deal. Pack up and head back to the capital, the young man said. Wait, Hayne called. What now? He asked, sounding annoyed. The assassins targeting Lady Luteia, they've been attacking as if they know exactly where we are. I've been reporting my location as ordered, but is it possible that information is being leaked to the First Prince's side? Watch your tongue, the young man warned. We're neutral. Our job is to evaluate who's fit to be king and keep an eye on the nobles who flock to them. You're just done with your assignment. 10 years or so, good work, I guess. With that, the young man vanished from sight. His presence was gone entirely, leaving Hayne alone. She sank to the ground, her strength draining away. What should she do? Clutching her head, Hayne sat frozen, unable to move. Chapter 29. Following her choice. Hayne still hadn't returned. Someone like her should have been able to find a suitable resting spot in no time. Though Shilene hadn't known her long, she could tell that much. Something was clearly wrong. But Shilene couldn't go searching alone, nor could she leave Luteia by herself. Still, Hayne's taking too long, isn't she? Luteia said, breaking the silence. It was obvious she was worried too. There should be plenty of places to rest around here, Shilene said. She hasn't been attacked by monsters, has she? Luteia asked hesitantly. Hayne's your guard, right? I'd say she's at least capable enough to handle herself. Don't you think so? You're right, Luteia admitted. Hayne's far stronger than I am. Then, what if she was ambushed by assassins? I doubt that too, Shilene replied. Not unless they knew we were here. Besides, assassins would target Luteia, not Hayne. Which meant there was no clear reason for Hayne to vanish like this. Either way, sitting here guessing won't help, Shilene said. But moving too far could mean missing her if she comes back. How about we look for a nearby spot to rest together? What if we move and something happens to Hayne? Luteia asked, her voice tinged with concern. If we don't stray too far, I'll be able to sense her if she's close. Sense her? That's impressive, Luteia said, a touch of awe in her voice. Wouldn't be much of a bodyguard if I couldn't, Shilene said with a shrug. Let's go. Luteia would naturally worry about Hayne. To Shilene, Hayne wasn't definitively guilty. Not yet. But disappearing at a time like this was undeniably suspicious. Still, if Hayne were truly working for the First Prince, there'd be no reason for her to help Luteia escape or to enlist Shilene's aid. That contradiction kept Shilene from fully labeling Hayne a traitor. For now, the priority was ensuring Luteia's safety while letting her rest. Ready to go? Shilene asked, extending a hand to Luteia. I'm fine. I can walk, Luteia said, brushing off the offer. All right, but watch your step. The ground's uneven. Paths Shilene could navigate with ease weren't necessarily safe for Luteia. Keeping an eye on their surroundings, Shilene chose their route carefully. There was still no sign of Hayne. She'd completely vanished. It was hard to believe she'd wander far without reason, and her intentions remained unclear. Was Hayne betraying Luteia? Shilene was starting to think it wasn't that simple. After a short trek, Shilene spotted a suitable cave. It showed no signs of monster activity and was well hidden from the outside. If Hayne came near, Shilene would notice, and if assassins appeared, she could handle them. We'll rest here and wait for Hayne, Shilene said, but we should set a time limit. A time limit? Luteia asked. You don't plan to wait forever, do you? If she doesn't come back, I'll go look for her, Luteia declared. Search this entire forest? That's too risky. I've been with Hayne forever, Luteia said, cutting Shilene off. You might suspect her, Luteia continued, her voice steady. And if she is leaking our location to assassins, there has to be a reason. A reason, huh? Shilene said. Honestly, I just can't figure out what Hayne's up to. If she's betraying you, there's no reason she'd help you escape in the first place, or hire me to protect you. Exactly, Luteia said softly. That's why abandoning Hain and leaving this place isn't an option I'd ever choose. Fair enough, Shilene said. I'll follow your choice. Really? Luteia asked, her eyes searching Shilene's. You're okay with that? You trust her, don't you? Shilene replied. I do, but don't you think I could be wrong? Whether you're wrong or not doesn't really matter to me, Shilene said frankly. My job is to protect you. If Hain's not a traitor, great. If she is and assassins show up, I'll keep you safe. Chasing Hain isn't my role, but if you want to chase her, then protecting you while you do is my job. All Luteia had to do was decide, and Shilene would follow through. That was the extent of her duty as a bodyguard, loyal to the task, nothing more. It's up to me then, Luteia said, processing the words. Honestly, I usually rely on Hain's advice in moments like this. Without her, I feel so much more anxious. You really depend on her, huh? Shilene said. Of course, we've been together since we were kids. She's not always expressive, but she's kind. That's why, Luteia trailed off, her gaze dropping. She probably wanted Shilene to believe in Hain too. When she comes back, why not ask her what's really going on? Shilene suggested. Or if we go looking and find her. Yes, you're right, Luteia agreed softly. Waiting for the missing Hain, Shilene and Luteia settled into the quiet of the cave, just the two of them passing the time in silence. Chapter 30. A bad feeling. After a brief rest, Luteia stood up. If we keep waiting, it'll get dark. If we're going to look for her, it's better to do it before nightfall, right? Some monsters get more active at night, and it's easier to search by sight now. So yeah, now's probably safer, Shilene replied. Shilene didn't mind either way, but for Luteia's safety, searching for Hain during daylight was the better call. Sprawled out and relaxed moments ago, Shilene sprang to her feet, quickly scanning their surroundings. No signs of monsters or anyone nearby. She pulled a few edible nuts from her pocket and handed them to Luteia. Found these earlier, they're safe to eat. Have them if you get hungry. Thank you, I'll take them, Luteia said. So, we head in the direction Hain went, right? Yes, let's do that, Luteia agreed. Searching for Hain in the forest was risky, especially without knowing where she'd gone. But after waiting this long with no sign of her return, though neither said it aloud, it seemed likely Hain had no intention of coming back. One possible conclusion, Hain had abandoned Luteia, but that was just Shilene's perspective. As Luteia had pointed out, their bond wasn't shallow, so there was still a chance she was wrong. With that in mind, Shilene and Luteia set off into the forest to find Hain. You said you can sense presences, Luteia said. How far does that work? It's not exactly a fixed range, Shilene said. I can feel things like someone watching from a distance or the intent of someone trying to slip away. It's harder to explain in a forest like this, but see that tree over there. That big one. It's pretty far off. If I send a burst of killing intent toward it. As she spoke, a flock of birds suddenly took flight from the tree. At that distance, I can make my presence felt to whatever's there. That's incredible, Luteia said wide-eyed. It's almost animalistic. Animalistic, huh? Shilene chuckled. Spend enough time training in a forest like this, and anyone could probably do it. Is that how it works? Luteia asked. Did you train in a place like this, Shilene? A bit denser than this, maybe. Barely any food, always scraping by just to survive the day. You had to be at your peak or you'd die. What? Why would you go to a place like that? For training. To get stronger. So you wanted to become strong? Luteia asked. Hard to say, Shilene said thoughtfully. I'm glad I did now, but I don't remember much about back then. Shilene had grown up in an environment where strength was the only way to survive, so becoming strong was her only option. Now, she enjoyed facing worthy opponents and was content with her work as a bodyguard. Whether she'd actively sought strength didn't matter much to her anymore. Turn it around, Shilene said. What do you think about all this, Luteia? Me? Yeah, having your life targeted out of nowhere. How's that feel? Honestly, Luteia said, her expression darkening. It makes me angry more than anything. Shilene couldn't help but laugh at the bluntness. Haha, that's great, totally you. What's that supposed to mean? What's your image of me? Luteia asked, half annoyed. A strong girl, I guess. You're way stronger than me, Luteia shot back. That's not what I mean, hold on, stop. Mid-conversation, Shilene froze, sensing something. She raised a hand to halt Luteia and immediately focused on their surroundings. What's wrong? Luteia asked, her voice tense. Is it Hain? No, it's not just one person, Shilene said. Multiple presences human. They're closing in, surrounding us. No way, Luteia whispered. Shilene nodded. In the middle of the mountains, a group was approaching with deliberate precision as if they'd locked onto their position. 9 times out of 10, they were assassins. Her bad feeling had been right. Hain's disappearance and the enemy knowing their location, it pointed to one thing: Hain was connected to them. Without hesitation, Shilene scooped Luteia into her arms. Huh? Luteia let out a confused squeak at the sudden move. Keep your mouth shut, Shilene said. You might bite your tongue. With that brief warning, Shilene took off at a full sprint, carrying Luteia through the forest. Chapter 31. A familiar face. Carrying Luteia in her arms, Shilene tore through the forest. Behind them, 3 pursuers followed, with 1 on each side, a total of 5 in pursuit. W8. What's going on? Luteia cried. No time to explain, but short version, we're being chased, Shilene said. Chased? By who? Ow? Luteia clamped her mouth shut, wincing. It seemed the jolting had caused her to bite her tongue. Told you, Shilene said. That could have been a serious injury. Stay quiet, okay. Luteia shot her a fierce glare, clearly frustrated, but there was no time to argue. Even carrying Luteia, Shilene couldn't seem to shake their pursuers. It wasn't that she was slow, far from it, but in the dense forest, overgrown with trees, the enemy tracked her relentlessly, never losing sight. All right, what's the plan? Shilene thought. Leaving Luteia somewhere to fight alone seemed risky. That left stopping to face them head-on, but the forest itself put Shilene at a disadvantage. The terrain could slow her reactions to incoming attacks. With a burst of speed, Shilene scaled a towering tree, leaping to get a better view of the surroundings. Not far off, she spotted a river flowing through an open clearing, spacious enough to fight without hindrance. She made her decision instantly. We're heading for the river, Shilene said. Hain will have to forget about her for now. Luteia's expression showed her reluctance, but she didn't argue or resist. She likely understood how dire the situation was. They were almost at the river when one of the pursuers closed the distance in a sudden burst of speed. Whoa! Shilene ducked as the sound of a weapon slicing through the air whizzed past her ear. She dodged low, then lashed out with a kick, landing a direct hit to the attacker's abdomen. Using the momentum, she pushed forward. The figure was cloaked in a robe, obscuring their identity, but the attack had been unmistakably aimed to kill both her and Luteia. Another assailant darted in front, cutting off their path. Brandishing a long-bladed sword, they swung with lethal precision. Shilene kicked off the ground, launching into the air. The assassin halted their blade mid-swing, redirecting it toward her. Shilene twisted her body midair, narrowly dodging the strike. Luteia, still in her arms, looked utterly bewildered, but Shilene couldn't afford to put more strain on her. Landing briefly on a nearby tree, she kicked off again, propelling them forward. What is this? Luteia yelped, the sudden leap clearly overwhelming her. They reached the river at last. Shilene set Luteia down quickly. Why, you said we were being chased, but assassins here? Luteia stammered, catching her breath. Yup, those attacks were definitely aimed at us, Shilene said, her eyes narrowing. And looks like they're here. 5 robed figures emerged before Shilene and Luteia. Among them were the 2 who'd attacked earlier. Are you after me? Luteia demanded. No, that's not quite right, one of them replied, casting off their robe to reveal the armor of a kingdom knight, a face Luteia had seen before. You! Luteia's eyes widened in shock. It's been a while, hasn't it, Lady Luteia? The young knight said, his tone familiar. It was clear he and Luteia knew each other. Chapter 32. Convenient. An acquaintance, Shilene asked. Yuri's Bolivis, one of the first Prince Arvent's personal guards, Luteia replied. Personal guards meant the 5 figures before them were, without a doubt, enemies to Luteia. Yet the young man, Yuri's, let out a small sigh. Calling my lord by his given name, I'll let that slide for now. We've come to protect you, Lady Luteia. His words hung in the air. Protect me, Luteia said, incredulous. After trying to kill me. There seems to have been a slight misunderstanding, Yuri said smoothly. Lord Arvent merely wishes for an opportunity to speak with you. Would you please accompany us back to the capital to arrange a meeting? Yuri's tone was polite, his demeanor devoid of overt hostility, at least on the surface. But Luteia's expression remained steeped in suspicion, and to Shilene, standing beside her, this was nothing short of an obvious trap. If he wants a meeting, can he send a formal letter? Luteia countered. Besides, I already have a bodyguard for my return. Your bodyguard, you mean the girl next to you, Yuri said, eyeing Shilene. With her suspicious appearance, I mistook her for a brigand trying to abduct you. Excuse me, Luteia snapped, her voice rising with indignation. Before she could say more, Shilene raised a hand to stop her. You thought I was a brigand? Shilene said, her tone calm but pointed. My apologies, Yuri said. I'll discipline my men later. They tried to kill me and Luteia, Shilene cut in. Luteia's eyes widened in shock. She'd been shielded by Shilene during the chase and likely hadn't grasped the full situation, but the enemy's true target had been her, not Shilene. Is that true? Luteia asked, her voice trembling slightly. A misunderstanding, Yuri said dismissively. You'd believe the word of some unknown woman over us, Knights of the Kingdom. Shilene risked her life to protect me, Luteia shot back. From assassins sent by Arvent, no less. I don't know what you're playing at, but trying to whisk me away with vague talk of protection? That's nothing but suspicious. This is troublesome, Yuri said, his expression tightening. We're acting under direct orders. If assassins are targeting you, we'd protect you with our lives. I said I don't need it, Luteia snapped. I will return to the capital, so get out of my sight. Luteia's words were firm and unequivocal. Yuri's face took on a faintly troubled look. Refusal was anticipated, he said, but if that's your answer, we have no choice but to use force. At his words, the four others cast off their robes in unison. Captain Yuri's, we could have just taken her out instead of wasting time talking, one of them grumbled. Truly a pointless delay, another added. They were the same ones who'd attacked Shilene earlier. One wielded a short-bladed sword, another a massive blade easily 3 times the length of Shilene's own. The remaining 2 carried an axe and a spear, respectively. Yuri himself held a simple straight sword but didn't raise it, instead issuing a command. Do not touch Lady Luteia. The so-called bodyguard kill her. With that order, the 4 sprang into action. Their target was no longer Luteia, but Shilene herself. Perfect, Shilene thought, a grin curling her lips as she faced her enemies head-on. Chapter 33. Annihilation. You really got me good back there, huh? The short sword wielder called out, grinning with glee. His eyes gleamed like a hunter sizing up prey. He might be a knight, but to him, Shilene was nothing more than a target. Charging straight at her, he moved faster than the other 3 trailing behind. Shilene met him with her blade, halting his advance. Noticing the sly curve of his lips, she realized he was up to something. In an instant, the short sword wielder leaped upward. A glint caught her eye, a longsword. The short sword wielder had drawn her attention, obscuring her view, while the longsword wielder behind him struck with a sudden, lethal blow. Shilene parried the short sword wielder aside, barely managing to block the longsword's strike with her blade. A shadow loomed above. She glanced up to see the axe wielder soaring through the air. Crush! He roared. The axe swung down with brutal force, aimed squarely at Shilene's head. A direct hit would mean certain death. Shilene deflected the longsword just enough, then ducked low and sprang to the left. Their coordination was tight, but the axe and longsword couldn't strike simultaneously due to their positioning. The axe carved a deep gash into the ground, a devastating blow, but meaningless if it missed. She sensed a presence right behind her. Spinning her body, Shilene deflected the incoming attack with her blade. Not bad, a voice remarked, tinged with admiration. It was the spear wielder. He'd held back during the initial assault, likely waiting to strike once Shilene dodged the other's attacks. She swung her blade in retaliation, but the spear wielder leaped backward, evading her strike. I observed your movements earlier, he said, twirling his spear with a graceful flourish. You're quite skilled. Thanks, Shilene replied. You lot aren't bad at working together either. We knights aren't just trained for one-on-one combat, he said smoothly. Don't call it cowardly, it's just business. Of course. Before she could finish, Shilene leaped to dodge a strike closing in from behind. The longsword wielder had taken the lead this time, lunging at her. His massive blade was ideal for mid-range combat. If Shilene could close the distance, she'd have the advantage, but the short sword wielder was there to prevent that. Then there was the axe wielder, whose heavy swings could kill in one hit if they landed, and the spear wielder, who kept his distance, patiently watching for an opening. Each was a seasoned fighter in their own right. As she landed from her leap, the short sword wielder was already in her face. "Ha ha ha, this is the power of the royal guard," he crowed. "No hard feelings, but your life's mine." Shilane sidestepped his strike and swung her blade in a single, fluid motion. For a moment, the short sword wielder looked confused, as if he couldn't comprehend what had happened. Slowly, he turned to face Shilane. "Hey, what did you?" Before he could finish, he staggered and collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Shilane had cut him down. "What?" the longsword wielder gasped, eyes wide with shock. "Your teamwork was solid," Shilane said, "but the moment you failed to finish me in the first strike, you lost your chance." "You," the axe wielder bellowed, enraged. Despite his bulky weapon, he moved with surprising speed, closing the gap. But Shilane was faster. She slipped into his guard and with a single slash sent his head flying. His body crashed to the ground with a heavy thud. "You're decently strong, I'll give you that," Shilane said. "But individually, none of you are anything special. Your teamwork gave you a shot at killing me, sure, but that first guy who charged in. Way too many openings." She turned toward the longsword wielder and advanced. With the two frontline fighters gone, handling him would be straightforward. "Damn you," the longsword wielder snarled, swinging his blade. Shilane parried it, sliding forward with fluid precision. Reaching him in an instant, she drove her blade into the ground and leaped. The spear wielder was right behind her, lunging forward. Both men stared at Shilane, their faces frozen in disbelief. "No way for us to fall so easily, ga," the spear wielder choked out. Shilane wrapped her legs around his neck, twisting her body with force. His neck snapped with a sickening crack. The longsword wielder raised his blade for another swing, but its sheer size worked against him. Shilane yanked her blade from the ground and cleaved him in two. In mere moments, the 4 knights who'd attacked her lay dead. "I see. My entire squad wiped out," Yuri said, his voice calm. "If you joined their attack from the start, you might have landed a hit," Shilane remarked. "I trusted my men," Yuri replied, "but I suppose it's my turn now." He drew the sword at his waist with a slow, deliberate motion. Shilane hadn't expected to take down all 4 so quickly, but something told her Yura's was on a different level than his subordinates. "You should have died to them," Yuri said. "Half-hearted strength only prolongs the pain." "Pretty confident, huh?" Shilane shot back. "Let's see if you can back it up." His unshaken demeanor was proof of his self-assurance, but Shilane wasn't fazed either. Raising her blade, she faced Yura's head-on. Chapter 34. Betrayal. "Well, damn, seriously? Luteia's bodyguard is good," a young man muttered, peering through a makeshift scope with his fingers as he observed Shilane's fight from a distance. Garrow Velfin's assigned role was twofold: inform Hain her mission was over and ensure Luteia's elimination. But the battle wasn't unfolding as he'd expected. Yura's, was it? Supposedly one of the top knights in the kingdom, but can he actually finish the job? Garrow mused aloud, then glanced back. "What do you think?" Stepping out from behind was Hain. "Didn't expect you to stick around," Garrow said. "Your surveillance gig's done, isn't it? Or are you here to watch the end?" Come on, say something," Garrow pressed. Hain approached him with slow, deliberate steps. "Your arrival marked the end of my role," she said. "But what if you'd never shown up?" "Are you out of your mind?" Garrow asked, instantly grasping her meaning. He drew a concealed dagger from a belt sheath, assuming a defensive stance. "If I can deliver Lady Luteia safely to the capital, I'll step away cleanly," Hain said. "That's not the point," Garrow snapped. "Your job's over. You think you can kill me and get away with it unnoticed." "I won't leave evidence," Hain replied. "I was trained to ensure that." Her expression burned with resolve. Garrow knew Hain as someone who rarely showed emotion and followed orders without question, a model operative. Yet here she was, defying everything. With a small sigh, he scratched his head. "You're seriously doing this, huh? That's why I was against it. 10 years is a long time. Long enough for a feeling or two to take root. Guess you ended up caring more for her than your real family, huh?" Hain lunged, swinging her dagger at Garrow. He dodged with nimble ease, evading her strike. "Not bad killing intent," Garrow said. "Impressive, but also a shame. You know I actually respect you, Hain. There's still time to pretend this never happened. I was ready to follow orders and leave, Hayne said. But I couldn't move, because Lady Luteia, she trusts me. Hayne knew Luteia had been searching for her. Given the assassins sent their way, suspicion was only natural. Shilene likely distrusted her, and yet Luteia refused to abandon her and leave. Seeing Luteia make that choice, even with her life on the line, had solidified Hayne's resolve. I'll deal with you here, Hayne said, to ensure Lady Luteia reaches the capital safely. That's outright betrayal, Garrow said. If you're set on this, I won't hold back. There's someone leaking information to the First Prince, Hayne countered. The organization is supposed to be neutral. If there's even a hint of foul play, I have reason enough to oppose you. You, Garrow said, raising an eyebrow. You've even thought up a justification for fighting me. You could have just stayed quiet and obeyed. What a pity. Drawing the sword at his waist, a broad, distinctively shaped blade, Garrow faced her. One last warning, he said. If you lose to me here, your precious family's life ends too. Oh, wait, not your family anymore, right? Just some stranger named Luteia means more to you than blood. His words were meant to shake her resolve, but Hayne's expression didn't waver. It was clear she was fully committed to killing him. Fine, Garrow said. No more talking, I'll kill you right here. With that, their blades clashed. Chapter 35. Not bad. Shilene and Yura's faced each other, neither moving immediately. Shilin gripped her katana with both hands, slightly lowering the blade's tip. Yura's held his sword in one hand, the other arm extended as if measuring the distance between them. Not coming? Yura's asked. You first. I'm ready whenever, Shilin replied. HMPH, very well, then I'll make the first move. With that, Yura's kicked off the ground, charging straight at Shilin. Their weapons clashed, steel ringing as they exchanged blows. Once the battle began, there was no hesitation. As expected, Yura's swordsmanship was on a different level from the foes Shilin had faced earlier. He deftly parried her attacks, seeking any opening to land a strike. But in a head-on duel, Shilin never faltered. After a flurry of strikes, their blades locked in a struggle, their movements halting. Not bad, Yura said. Our swordsmanship is nearly equal, wouldn't you say? Equal, Shilin replied. What, got something to say? Speak plainly. Nothing, I've already seen through your swordplay. Oh, then perhaps I'll change my approach. Yura's channeled mana into his free arm. At the same moment, the ground beneath Shilin glowed. She deflected his sword and leaped back just as the earth surged upward, sharp, thick stone spikes erupting where she'd stood. I'm quite adept at magic, you see. How about you? Yura's taunted. With a flick of his fingers, more stone spikes shot up from the ground beneath Shilin. She broke into a sprint, weaving through the attacks while keeping Yura's in her sights. A single hit from those spikes could easily pierce her body. Spotting a fleeting gap, she closed the distance to Yura's. Another spike surged in front of her, blocking her path. Yura's mastery of magic was, as he claimed, formidable. Shilin, however, had a critical weakness. Her mana reserves were exceptionally low, making her ill-suited for magical combat. But that was no surprise. She'd always known this. Against an opponent who excelled at magic, she'd simply fight in her own way. Don't think you can keep dodging forever, Yura sneered. He'd predicted her movement. A stone spike erupted beneath her, sending Shilin's lithe frame soaring into the air. Shilin, Luteia cried out from where she watched. Midair, Shilin glanced briefly at Luteia before landing directly in front of Yura's. What? I was certain that it hit you. Yura stammered, stunned. He had every reason to be shocked. Shilin had deliberately let herself be caught by his magic, or rather, she'd feigned it. Knowing the spikes would emerge, she used their momentum to propel herself into a high leap, a feat well within her capabilities. Closing the distance in an instant, she caught Yura's off guard and swung her blade at his left arm. With a clean snap, his arm was severed. Gah, you, Yura's grunted, yet he didn't falter. Despite the loss of his arm, he immediately raised his sword with his right hand, ready to counter. To fight on after such a grievous wound spoke volumes of his resolve. The duel resumed, their blades clashing once more. But for Shilin, the outcome was already clear. I told you, she said, I've seen through you. Waga. In a contest of blades, Shilin would always prevail. Yura's likely knew it too. Their swordsmanship wasn't equal, Shilin held the advantage. He'd switched to magic because he must have learned she rarely, if ever, used it herself. but such knowledge meant nothing to Shilin. She adapted and struck. That was the kind of swordswoman she was. Slipping past his guard, she landed a blow to his side and circled behind him. Yuri raised his sword high, pouring his strength into a desperate strike meant to cleave Shilin in two. She parried it effortlessly, their eyes locking. "My defeat," Yuri muttered. With a single stroke, Shilin severed his head. His end was dignified, unlike the other foes she'd faced, a knight's death. Shilin sustained only minor scratches. Including the 4 opponents she'd fought earlier, she emerged from this battle nearly unscathed. She flicked the blood from her katana and sheathed it. Yuri's head rolled across the ground, blood pooling and staining the earth crimson. Luteia, who had watched the entire fight, collapsed to her knees. "Next time, maybe close your eyes," Shilin said. "You're not exactly cut out for this, are you?" "I can't just look away when you're fighting for me," Luteia replied. "I'm just doing my job, but suit yourself." Yuri's was someone I knew, at least. The least I could do was witness his end. A noble's duty, perhaps. From Luteia's words, it was clear she'd believed in Shilin's victory from the start. That trust, Shilin realized, had grown from the short time she'd spent protecting her. Being trusted by the one I'm guarding, not bad at all. Out of Luteia's sight, Shilin allowed herself a faint smile. The first prince's elite guard had met their end, cut down by Shilin's blade. Chapter 36. As you wish. How much time had passed? Ha ha ha. Hane's ragged breaths filled the air as she tightly gripped her dagger. Her body was riddled with wounds, blood seeping ceaselessly. None were fatal, but her body screamed that death was near. The young man standing before her was no different. "Pay." Garrow spat blood onto the ground. His breathing was erratic, his vision unsteady, yet he still raised his blade toward Hane. "Here I come." The final clash began. Hane's dagger aimed for Garrow's throat. Garrow's blade targeted Hane's heart. With their short weapons, the battle unfolded at point-blank range, a flurry of deadly strikes. Suddenly, Garrow seized Hane's collar and hurled her backward with fierce momentum. In that instant, Hane's dagger grazed his shoulder. Undeterred, Garrow charged, his blade aimed straight at her. Midair, Hane flung her dagger at Garrow. He deflected it with ease. A smirk curled his lips as he closed the distance with startling speed, only to freeze in place. Gah! A thin wire had coiled around Garrow's neck. It was tied to the dagger Hane had thrown, and she now manipulated it, ensnaring his throat. The dagger, flung earlier, had lodged itself into a branch of a nearby tree. Garrow immediately tried to cut the wire, but that split second decided everything. With a mana-infused hand strike, Hane severed his neck. Blood sprayed in a torrent, drenching Hane as she collapsed to the ground. Her body had reached its limit. Ha-ha-fa-fu. Hane steadied her breathing, her shoulders heaving. She looked up at Garrow, who slumped lifelessly before her. You've gotten strong, Hane," he rasped. "I'm glad." "It was a hair's breadth," she replied, "but that single hair made the difference. My loss, take it." Garrow revealed a bomb, primed to detonate with an infusion of mana. Even knowing he'd pull something like this in his final moments, Hane's body refused to move. Still, she. For once, the stoic Hane let out a primal scream and forced herself to run. An instant later, a massive explosion sent her body tumbling across the ground. Her ears rang, her battered body felt like it might shatter, but a glance confirmed her limbs were intact. Sprawled on the ground, unable to move properly, she knew she'd lost too much blood. Gazing powerlessly at the sky, she saw a lone bird soaring above. "Lucky you," she murmured, free to fly anywhere. A fleeting, trivial thought as Hane quietly closed her eyes. "Ain. Hane, stay with me. M'lady." As sound returned, Hane opened her eyes to see Luteia, tears streaming down her face. But relief quickly replaced her worry. "Thank goodness you're alive," Luteia said. "Aye." Hane saw Luteia tending to her wounds. Nearby stood Shilin. "An explosion that big, anyone would notice," Shilin said. "True enough," Hane replied weakly. "You're banged up, but no fatal wounds," Shilin added. Left alone, Hane would have surely died, but Luteia had come for her. Yet, a crushing wave of guilt washed over Hane. Shouldn't she have died here? "M'lady, No need to say anything," Luteia interrupted. "I decided to trust you, Hane. And since that's what my employer decided, I'm following her lead," Shilin said. "So just rest quietly." If any enemies show up, I'll handle them. Thank you, Hayne whispered. She let herself lean into Luteia's words. By defeating Garrow, she could still stay by Luteia's side, if only for the short time until they reached the capital. No one else would learn of this. If she could safely deliver Luteia, that would be enough for Hayne. So, as Luteia wished, Hayne buried her sins deep within her heart. She glanced at Shilene. Thank you for protecting Milady. No need for thanks, it's just my job, Shilene replied. Heh, is that so? With that, Hayne conveyed her gratitude and closed her eyes once more. Chapter 37. The Journey's End. The journey, long yet fleeting, was nearing its conclusion. Near the Lawrence Mountains, Hayne's injuries forced a delay, but no further assassins pursued them. After a slightly circuitous route, they finally reached the capital, Grellies. To enter the city, they hired a coachman. Now their carriage rattled across a stone bridge. That's one massive bridge, Shilene remarked. This entrance is rich with water, Luteia explained, hence the bridge. It was originally built to deter enemy invasions, Hayne added. The kingdom enjoys peace now, but war could erupt at any time. Got it, Shilene said, nodding thoughtfully. Hayne, now fully recovered, had grown more talkative with Shilene. In the end, all Hayne revealed about her injuries in the mountains was that she fought an enemy. Yet, her willingness to risk death to protect Luteia was undeniable. Both shared the same goal, safeguarding Luteia. Hayne, however, clearly cared for Luteia far more deeply than Shilene, who was merely fulfilling a job. To ensure Luteia's anonymity upon entering the capital, Hayne had meticulously prepared. She vetted the coachman's background, and their plan was to head straight to the mansion of the first princess, Flare. According to Hayne, Flare had temporarily left the royal palace for her own safety, but her residence was heavily fortified. If they could reach it, Luteia's safety would be assured. So, Luteia, didn't you live in the capital? Shilene asked. Not always, Luteia replied. My family's estate is to the south. We thought hiding in a remote region would be safer, Hayne said. But we should have prioritized joining Lady Flare sooner. No use dwelling on what-ifs, Luteia said. Shillen's presence got us this far. If we'd been careless, we might have faced even more assassins in the capital. Luteia's words rang true. Shilene's skill as a bodyguard had been crucial to their journey. The trust Luteia and Hayne placed in her was evident. My job's almost done then, Shilene said, leaning back and muttering abruptly. Her task was to ensure Luteia's safety until they reached Flare. Once that was secured, Shilene's role would end. True, Luteia said. I'll make sure you're well compensated. Looking forward to it, Shilene replied. So, what's next after the job? Luteia asked. Haven't decided, Shilene said. Maybe sightsee in the capital, then hit the road again. Shilene rarely stayed in one place. Once a job ended, she moved on, a lifestyle she'd long embraced. Hypothetically, Luteia began, would you consider staying on as my bodyguard? Luteia's sudden proposal caught Shilene off guard. Why, once you're safe, you won't need one, right? Honestly, this ordeal made it clear, Luteia said. If I could be targeted at any moment, I want to secure my safety going forward. I'd be expensive, you know, Shilene teased. Luteia chuckled. You're so skilled, I'd say you're a bargain. One of you is more than enough. Indeed, Hayne added unexpectedly. Milady needs someone as strong as you by her side. Shilene blinked. I thought you'd object. Not at all, Hayne said. You've saved Milady multiple times. That's undeniable. That's an option, I guess, Shilene mused. Luteia's offer gave her pause. Truthfully, continuing as her bodyguard didn't sound bad, but Shilene didn't answer immediately. You can think it over after the job, Luteia said. No rush. Yeah, it's not urgent. Shilene shot upright, her senses sharp. Hayne reacted almost simultaneously. What's wrong? Luteia asked, bewildered by their sudden tension. They were nearing the gate to the capital, the bridge almost behind them. The massive gate creaked open with a low groan. In a bustling capital, the presence of many people was expected, but if those presences were all targeting Luteia, that changed everything. As the carriage halted, Shilene and the others disembarked. Waiting for them was an army of knights, led by a golden-haired young man and a towering knight clad in full armor. Kept me waiting, Luteia, the young man said. Arvent, why are you here? Luteia gasped. That's Lord Arvent to you, he snapped. Is that how you address the next king? His tone dripped with arrogance and disdain. Even Shilene could tell in an instant that this man was unfit to rule. But her attention wasn't on Arvent. It was on the knight beside him, exuding an overwhelming aura. Without crossing blades, she knew this was undoubtedly the kingdom's strongest knight. Waiting for us with such a grand escort? Luteia said. All these knights, quite the reception. Naturally, Arvent sneered. I've come fully prepared to apprehend the mastermind behind the knight slaying, the heinous criminal responsible for killing my personal guard. Luteia's eyes widened in shock at Arvent's words. Whatever the circumstances, it was true that his elite guard had been killed. That's because you sent them after me first, Luteia protested. Got proof, Arvent countered. Because I do. I have footage of my guard, sent to protect you, being brutally slaughtered. Arvent produced a small orb from his pocket, a magical device that, when infused with mana, projected recorded events. It displayed Yura's offering protection, only to be cut down by Shilene after a battle. The footage was clearly manipulated, but only Luteia and Shilene could attest to that. As the accused, their words held no weight. So that's why you sent those knights, Luteia realized. This was your plan all along. No idea what you're talking about, Arvent said, but it's fact that my guard, sent to protect you, was killed by your hired sword. Thus, Luteia Halenwerk, I'm arresting you for the crime of knight slaying. We'll hear your story in due time. At his words, the knights behind him began to move. The overwhelming numerical disadvantage was clear. Hain instinctively stepped closer to shield Luteia, but, Hain, stop. A woman appeared abruptly, whispering something to Hain. She had been standing near Arvent, but moved with startling speed to close the distance. Clearly a skilled operative, she didn't attack, only halted Hain's actions. I'm sorry, milady, Hain said. This is as far as I go. Hain, Luteia exclaimed. Whatever was whispered, Hain could no longer aid Luteia. Now Shilene alone had to protect her. Against such numbers, fighting while guarding Luteia would be daunting, even for Shilene. With no other choice, she prepared to flee with Luteia, but the towering knight blocked their path. Ha ha ha. You put up a good fight, Luteia, Arvent crowed. His mocking laughter echoed as a hopeless situation unfolded before them. Chapter 38. The last sight. The situation was undeniably dire, yet Shilene remained calm. Hain wasn't colluding with the enemy, rather she seemed bound by some constraint, unable to act. The towering knight raised a hand, halting the advancing soldiers. You lot wouldn't stand a chance. Lady Luteia, stay where you are. At his command, the knights obeyed without question. As expected, the man before them was likely the kingdom's mightiest warrior, and he stood as Arvent's ally. For now, no one seemed intent on harming Luteia directly, but escaping with her would be near impossible. You think I'd let you slip away? Arvent sneered. You're the one who killed my knights, aren't you? Not very knightly, are you? Shilene shot back. Making excuses to tear others down. This is only my second time dealing with someone like you. Is that so? What an unlucky little girl, the knight replied. But no need to worry anymore. You'll die by my hand, Claude Dilia's. The man, Claude, slowly leveled his sword at Shilene. Though he wielded it like a longsword to Shilene, it was unmistakably a greatsword, massive in scale. That he swung it effortlessly with one hand spoke to his immense strength, but his movements seemed unremarkable. Shilene struck, aiming for Claude's throat. A sharp clang echoed as metal met metal, and Shilene's eyes widened in shock. Her strike had undoubtedly connected, yet Claude's neck bore not a single scratch. Worse, the tip of her katana had snapped. A fine strike, Claude said. Against an ordinary knight, that blow might have taken their head. A pity, though. You're too tough, Shilene muttered, exhaling in disbelief. Claude's body was enveloped in mana, akin to unyielding ore. Most swordsmen, including Shilene, infused their blades with a trace of mana to prevent chipping and to cut through otherwise impervious materials. But Claude channeled mana into his armor, hardening his entire form. That resilience rendered Shilene's blade useless, an insurmountable barrier no matter how much stronger she might be. Talent, mana capacity, is something you're born with, Claude said. I have it, you don't. I've never met another with mana as vast as mine. A single exchange had been enough for him to gauge Shilene's limited mana reserves. Bring it, she replied. Shilane poured more mana into her katana than usual. If she lacked quantity, she'd make up for it with precision. Adjusting her meager mana, she moved to deliver a strike capable of reaching Claude. His movements weren't exceptional, or so she thought. In an instant, his blade loomed before her. She dodged right, retreating to gain distance. Claude's strike slammed into the ground, shaking the bridge violently. He'd used mana to accelerate his attack, amplifying its speed and power. A direct hit would mean certain death. His overwhelming durability paired with devastating strength confirmed it. Claude was as formidable as he appeared. Yet Shilane raised her katana, showing no sign of retreat. He was likely among the top 5 opponents she'd ever faced, no, perhaps the strongest. And she had to face him while protecting Luteia, her charge. This was the moment to fulfill her duty. "Gets my blood pumping, a situation like this," Shilane said. "Still think you can win?" Claude replied. "Youth is a fine thing." "You're pretty old, huh?" "Not that young, no," he said. "Which makes crushing young talent a touch regrettable. But you're an enemy, so I have no choice but to kill you." "Works for me, nice and simple," Shilane said. "I'm thinking the same, you're someone I have to cut down." Gripping her katana, Shilane lowered her stance, channeling even more mana. She needed to cleave through Claude's impervious armor. She'd have one chance. If he blocked it, her limited mana would make defeating him impossible. As they faced each other, poised to strike. "Go Hain." Hain's pained groan cut through the air. Luteia rushed toward her. "Don't move," Claude barked, turning toward Luteia. The woman beside Hain had done something, prompting Luteia to instinctively run to her side. Hain tried to react, but the woman restrained her. Claude's mana-charged strike surged toward Luteia. TCH. Shilane clicked her tongue, instantly grasping his intent. There was no need for such a powerful technique to merely stop Luteia. But Claude knew Shilane wouldn't stand idly by as an attack targeted her charge. To stop it, she'd have to sacrifice the strike meant for him. Shilane accelerated, throwing her full strength into intercepting Claude's blow. To protect Luteia from even a scratch, she poured her mana into the clash. Her katana shattered, and at the last moment, she took the brunt of Claude's attack. "Huh." A dazed voice escaped Luteia. Shilane shielded her by choice, so there was no need for concern. But she lacked the strength to voice those words. "Magic blade, art." "It's over, little girl." Claude's second strike sent Shilane's body soaring. Blood sprayed as she was hurled off the stone bridge. "Shilane," Luteia screamed. The last thing Shilane saw was Luteia reaching out desperately, but her hand could never reach, and Shilane plummeted into the abyss below. Chapter 39. Driven by emotion. Kuheohata. Arvint's laughter echoed across the bridge. With leisurely steps, he approached Luteia, who had already been seized by the knights and forced to kneel before him. "You had a fine bodyguard, but it was all for naught," he sneered. Luteia glared at him. Bound and restrained, she had no means of resistance. With a smug grin, Arvint signaled to the knights. "Take her away. I'll interrogate her personally later." "Yes, sir." Following Arvint's orders, the knights moved to escort Luteia. "Arvint, how far will you sink before you're satisfied?" she spat. "Sink? No, I'm aiming higher," he retorted. "A sinner like you wouldn't understand." "You." "Shut up and walk." "Gah." Unable to even lunge at him, Luteia was forcibly marched forward by the knights. Her thoughts lingered on Shilane. Shilane had taken Claude's blow to protect her. The memory churned a mix of emotions, nausea rising within her. And then there was Hain. She had fought for Luteia, even at the cost of her own injuries. There had to be a reason she was now incapacitated. Unable to ask, Luteia was loaded into a barred carriage prepared by the knights. Shackles bound her hands and feet, and any attempt to speak was silenced. After finally reaching the capital, it had all come to this. Luteia had merely danced to Arvint's tune. Regret gnawed at her, but there was nothing she could do. Arvint climbed into the carriage with her. "Get it now." "This is what happens when you defy me," he said. "I'll allow you to speak. Got something to say?" "I have nothing to say to you," Luteia replied coldly. "Kyukuku, defiant as ever," Arvint chuckled. "But in this state, it's almost charming. You're despicable, planning to make me a slave, are you?" "No idea what you're on about," he said. "But you've got 2 paths ahead, slavery or death. Don't worry, you've got a few days' reprieve." He had no intention of granting her a trial. Arvent was wielding unchecked power. If she could only reach Flair, there might still be hope, but without Hain or Shilene, Luteia was utterly alone. "Don't fret," Arvent said. "Obey me and you might just live." His words were likely true. Submission would spare her life, at least, but Luteia had already made up her mind. No matter what, she would never bow to Arvent. Luteia was thrown into a prison, a special chamber within the royal palace, accessible only to a select few. Forced into a straitjacket, she was stripped of all freedom. Naturally, no visitors came, and it was doubtful anyone even knew she was here. The only one who visited for interrogations was Arvent. "Better than skulking around, isn't it? Quite cozy," he mocked. "Hey, don't ignore me." Arvent grabbed her bangs, yanking her face upward. She had no intention of meeting his gaze, but all she could do now was glare. "Say, Luteia, we were engaged, weren't we?" he said. "Engaged to a wretch who frames innocents and enslaves them? It makes me sick to think of it," she spat. The same tactics he'd used on her. Arvent was that kind of scum. Realizing his true nature, Luteia had broken their engagement and tried to expose his crimes, only for everything to be buried. Even now, she couldn't forgive him and had been searching for a way to bring his deeds to light. "Power makes anything possible," Arvent said. "If you just turned a blind eye, we could have had something nice by now." "As if I'd ever stoop to your level," she shot back. "Haha, that's what I love about you," he said. "Breaking a woman like you, it's exhilarating. I thought about having you killed countless times, but that unyielding spirit of yours is beautiful." With that, Arvent leaned closer. Seizing a momentary lapse in his grip, Luteia slammed her forehead into his face. "Gah! Stop posturing, you idiot," she snapped. "The idiot's you, you wretched woman," he roared. "I show you kindness, and you spit in my face." Gah! Unable to move, Luteia could only endure as Arvent stomped viciously on her abdomen. He struck her repeatedly, relentlessly, but still, she glared at him with unyielding defiance. Pain blurred her consciousness, yet Luteia endured. "Ha ha, Luteia," Arvent panted. "Your whole family, they're all fools." "What are you saying? You've suspected it, haven't you? Your father's death wasn't an accident." Luteia's eyes widened. She'd been told her father died in a monster attack. The knight's reports gave no reason to doubt it, but given her current situation, she'd wondered if there was more to it. She just hadn't wanted to face that truth. "So, you killed my father?" she whispered. "That's right, I ordered his death," Arvent confirmed. "Arvent, I'll kill you, I swear it." Her voice was quiet, but seething with resolve. Knowing she couldn't act on it only made Arvent laugh harder, relishing her defiance. "Ha ha ha, that's the face, Luteia. Don't bother with that calm facade. This is the real you." "Shut up, you filthy scum, gah." Arvent stomped her abdomen again before speaking. "You have 3 days. Refuse to submit, and I'll have you executed." Even now, Arvent seemed convinced she'd bend to his will. If so, he was undoubtedly the greatest fool in the world. Spitting blood-flecked saliva, Luteia signaled her defiance. Arvent left with a smug air. Her body throbbed with pain, and Luteia slumped, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't process. She let out a raw scream. Anger and sorrow. Tears wouldn't solve anything. Screaming wouldn't save her. All Luteia could do was push this situation in the direction Arvent least desired within the fleeting 3 days she had left. Chapter 40. Beyond saving. In a secluded corner of the capital, Hain faced a man. His silver hair and dark skin were an uncommon sight in these parts. Officially, he led a prominent merchant guild in the capital, but his true identity was far more secretive. Like Hain, he belonged to the same shadowy organization, serving as one of its key figures. "I tasked Garrow with relaying my message, but it seems it never reached you," the man said. "Yes. Do you know what became of Garrow?" Hain asked. "We tracked him as far as the outskirts of the Lawrence Mountains," he replied. "After that, he vanished around the time I sent word to you, I presume." The man, Kirik Rafa, spoke with a knowing tone, his gentle smile belying a chilling presence. Hain swallowed hard. It was like a frog stared down by a serpent. Maintaining her composure took every ounce of effort. "I never received any message," she said. "I have nothing more to say." "Is that so?" "Well, no matter," Kirik said, unfazed. "Our organization values results. I've always rated you higher than Garrow, Hain. Your return after completing your mission is more than enough." As he spoke, Kirik reached for a glass on the table, draining its contents in one gulp. "Phew, well, you've worked hard for a long time," he said. "You're free until your next orders. Rest as you please." "May I ask one thing?" Hain ventured. "Go ahead," Kirik replied. "Milady Luteia, is there no way to spare her?" At Hain's words, Kirik's eyes narrowed. "Why?" he asked. "She still has value," Hain said. "She commands the people's trust. Keeping her alive would be—" "Value? Trust?" Kirik interrupted, his tone cold and dismissive. "I place no worth in such things." "Whether she's useful is for me to decide," he continued. "Luteia is no longer of any value, the trust of the masses. If we want it, we don't need honest means to get it. She has no true allies left. Even the princess will likely abandon her." "But—" "I won't say it twice, Hain," Kirik cut in sharply. "Your role is done. Forget about Luteia. Forget her, impossible, but further argument would yield no better answer. You focus on yourself now," Kirik said. "Remember why you're here." "Yes, I understand," Hain replied, her voice hollow. All she could do was nod. After leaving the room, Hain wandered the capital alone. The city bustled as always, its lively clamor almost convincing her that the events unfolding were just a dream. But Luteia wasn't by her side. Chilene, too, had vanished and not returned. A direct hit from Claude's attack would likely have been fatal, but Hain refused to believe Chilene was dead. Slipping into a deserted alley, Hain sank to the ground, muttering in a small voice. I can't save Milady anymore." She was utterly powerless. If she had managed to escape with Luteia back then, they might have gotten away. But the woman at Arvint's side belonged to the same organization as Hain, tasked with monitoring him. In that moment, she had declared Hain's mission over, warning that any misstep would cost her family's lives, specifically her sister's. Hain had only one family member, her younger sister. She had joined this organization for her sake. Yet Luteia, with whom she'd spent so many years, had become family too. She shouldn't have to choose between them, but she was forced to. In the end, Hain chose her sister. That choice now tormented her. Suppressing the urge to scream, Hain sat in silence as time slipped by, inwardly cursing her own helplessness. Chapter 41. Without fail, when Chilene awoke, she found herself on a bed in an unfamiliar room. Bandages swathed her body, but she was alive. Slowly sitting up, she immediately recalled what she needed to do. "I have to go." She didn't know how much time had passed. It might already be too late. Even so, her job wasn't finished. Ignoring the pain coursing through her body, uninterested in where she was, Chilene reached for her katana nearby, only to realize the blade was missing. "You're awake." A girl in a dress entered, accompanied by a woman who appeared to be her nightly guard. "Who are you?" Chilene asked. "Mind your tongue," the knight snapped. "This is—" "Eris, it's fine," the girl interjected. The knight's name was Eris, it seemed. The girl in the dress, with graceful poise, offered Chilene a greeting. "I am Flare Lindworm. Does that name mean anything to you?" "The kingdom's first princess, right?" Chilene replied. This was the very place she was meant to deliver Luteia to, Flare's mansion. But only Chilene had made it here. "My royal guard witnessed the battle on the bridge," Flare said. "Rescuing you from the river was nothing short of a miracle. It seems my brother has abandoned all pretense of restraint in his pursuit of the throne." "Looks like it," Chilene said. The moment he chose to kill or coerce Luteia into joining him, he stopped caring about methods. "You're right," Flare admitted, her expression tinged with sorrow. "I wish I could have welcomed Luteia sooner, but that chance has passed." Chilene let out a small sigh and moved to leave the room. Eris blocked her path. "Wait, where do you think you're going?" Eris demanded. "To save Luteia," Chilene replied. Don't you understand the situation?" Eris said. "Lady Luteia is in the royal palace, under Lord Arvint's control. Rescuing her now, it's impossible." "Don't decide that for me," Chilene shot back. "I'm her bodyguard. I have to see my duty through to the end." "If you're her bodyguard," Flare interjected, "didn't your duty end the moment you failed to protect her?" Her words cut deep, especially since Luteia had resolved to fight for Flare's sake. Yet Flare spoke so detachedly, as if she were a stranger. "What's that supposed to mean?" Chilene asked. "You think it's fine to abandon Luteia too?" "I didn't say that," Flare replied. "But what can you do, going alone?" Cut down anyone who gets in my way, Shilane said. That's all I can do. And isn't that why you're here? Flare countered. Your wounds are far from minor. You can't possibly go in this condition. Flare was right. Pain racked Shilane's body, and moving recklessly could reopen her wounds. Claude's blow had only narrowly missed being fatal, but stopping Shilane meant abandoning Luteia. Aren't you Luteia's friend? Shilane asked. I consider her my dearest friend at the very least, Flare said. Then don't you want to at least try to help her? As a princess, Flare replied, I must say that saving Luteia would require far too great a sacrifice. Flare and Arvent were at odds. Rescuing Luteia now would mean storming the royal palace directly, an act tantamount to civil war led by the first princess. So, it's about weighing Luteia's life against the sacrifices needed to save her, Shilane said. Which one's worth more? In simple terms, yes, Flare admitted, and you're choosing to abandon her. You watch your mouth, Eris snapped, stepping toward Shilane. Eris, Flare said, halting her. Flare turned away, falling silent. You fulfilled your role as Luteia's bodyguard admirably, reaching the capital, Flare said. Throwing away the life we saved, wouldn't that go against Luteia's wishes? If you're trying to persuade me, I'm not listening, Shilane said. I'm not asking for your help, I'll go alone. Why are you so fixated on her? Flare asked, her expression darkening. Was she exasperated by Shilane's stubbornness? I took a job to protect her, Shilane said. As long as there's a chance she's alive, I'll fulfill that duty. That's all. Even if it costs your life, Flare pressed, a young woman like you. I wouldn't take a bodyguard job without resolve, Shilane replied. And I'm not planning to die. Saving Luteia is the only thing I can do. You're a strong one, Flare said, her face hardening, a shift from her earlier demeanor. Shilane's unwavering resolve to save Luteia might have stirred something in her. Let me ask again, Shilane said. Don't you want to save Luteia? Of course I want to save her, Flare burst out. In that moment, the mask of the composed princess fell away. Of course I want to save Luteia. She's my dearest friend, and yet, I know she's here in the capital, imprisoned in the palace. But as the first princess, I can do nothing. So, at the very least, I wanted to save you, the one who stood by her side. I'm grateful for that, Shilane said. But as a princess, isn't there something you can do? It's impossible, Eris interjected. Lady Luteia is branded a Night Slayer. If Lady Flare shields her, suspicion will fall on her as well. The capital would drown in blood. Eris was likely right. Bound by her position, Flare couldn't act, no matter how much she wanted to save her friend. The cost of saving one life was too steep. But Flare's words revealed her true feelings. She wanted to save Luteia just as much as Shilane did. I don't care what anyone says, Shilane declared. I'm going to save Luteia. If you can't help, you don't have to. But I will bring her back. When I do, welcome her, okay? Shilane started walking. Whether Luteia was alive was uncertain. But as long as her death wasn't confirmed, Shilane's duty remained. Eris made no move to stop her this time. Please wait, Flare called out. Still got something to say? I'm kind of in a hurry, Shilane replied. I've been monitoring my brother's movements to some extent, Flare said. When he decides to deal with Luteia, he'll likely choose a public execution. That's the kind of man he is. A public execution, huh? Shilane said. That might make rescuing her easier than sneaking in. But simply taking her won't suffice, Flare warned. If you seize her by force, they'll claim it was on my orders and send troops after you. That would spark conflict. However, there's a way to save Luteia within the kingdom's laws, which could protect her. Laws? Shilane asked. Lady Flare, you can't mean, Eris began. I'm sorry, Eris, Flare interrupted. Her words, I'll bring Luteia back without want to bet on them. If I abandon Luteia, who's fought to support me, I'll regret it forever. I want to entrust her rescue to this woman, and my fate along with it. Eris seemed to have more to say but respected Flare's resolve. With a heavy sigh, she fell silent. So, what are you offering? Shilane asked. I have a few items to give you, Flare said. But first, may I have your name? Shilane Hazakura. Shilane then, Flare said. You're not from this kingdom, are you? Nope, far to the east mostly. I see. Entrusting this to a foreigner may be too great a burden, but I believe Luteia trusts you. And I trust your words. So, please, save my dearest friend. Don't need to ask, Shilane said. It's my job. Thank you, Flair said, bowing deeply. Far from peak condition, Shilene's resolve had been set from the start. To save Luteia, she would venture into the battlefield alone. Chapter 42. All alone. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Deprived of proper meals and subjected to Arvent's sporadic cruelty, Luteia was so weakened she could barely stand or walk on her own. Yet her spirit remained unbroken. She would never submit to Arvent, and her execution was set. The sentence was to be carried out without delay. The grand hall within the royal palace was open to the public, and the execution would take place before the gathered crowd. Luteia's charges were read aloud, but she was given no chance to refute the fabricated accusations. Murmurs of unrest rippled through the crowd. Luteia wouldn't do such a thing, some thought. But if the prince himself had investigated and ordered her execution, could it be true? The people had no means to verify the truth, and above all, Claude, the kingdom's mightiest knight, stood watch. No one dared challenge Luteia's execution. That's fine. Luteia no longer sought to fight. She accepted her fate. She felt no urge to resist what was coming. Her gaze drifted to Arvent, seated at a distance, basking in his sense of superiority. It stung that she could do nothing to him, but soon she'd never have to see his face again. That was enough. Before her stood the gallows, an apparatus that didn't belong in the palace hall. They had gone to the trouble of bringing it here, all to torment Luteia to the very end. Led by knights, Luteia was forced to walk. Shackles bound her hands and feet, but escape was never an option. Partway, Claude stepped in front of her. "Why would someone like you side with a man like him?" Luteia asked. She knew Arvent was wrong. Though she couldn't see Claude's expression beneath his armor, he answered immediately. "A king cannot rule on kindness alone," he said. "When forced to choose, I side with the one who benefits us most. That's all." In other words, the other candidate, Flair, was too gentle. Luteia couldn't disagree. But she had believed Flair could be supported, that her kindness could be bolstered. That was why Luteia had fought for her. Saying so now wouldn't change anything. Step by step, she ascended the gallows. Ironically, the view from the top revealed a clear, sunny sky. She couldn't help but laugh at the cruel beauty of the scene, knowing she was about to die. The knights efficiently positioned her. Watching them adjust the rope's length, Luteia understood Arvent's vile intent. By shortening it, they ensured she would suffer as long as possible. Normally, the fall would snap her neck instantly. But at this length, the pain would linger without breaking her neck. They meant to make her suffer until the very end, a clear reflection of Arvent's malice. "Then I'll endure it." She refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Luteia steeled herself. If she was to die, she would do so quietly, enduring to the last, denying Arvent any joy. It was the only thing she could do. The rope was placed around her neck, a blindfold tied over her eyes. The preparations were complete. She didn't know when the trapdoor beneath her would give way. Her only regrets were Hain and Shilene. She had never truly understood Hain. Despite Hain's suffering, Luteia had bound her with empty words like, "I trust you." If her death could free Hain, Luteia prayed she would find salvation. And Shilene, was she even alive? The last time Luteia saw her, her wounds were grave. If Luteia hadn't moved, perhaps Shilene could have defeated Claude. She had been cut down because she protected Luteia. No apology could undo that, and Luteia would likely never have the chance to offer one. She knew so little about Shilene. Their relationship was merely that of bodyguard and client, yet Luteia had wanted to know her better. That was why she had proposed Shilene stay on as her protector. The longer she waited, the more fear crept in. She had resolved to face death unflinchingly, yet the instinct to live gnawed at her. Arvent knew this and deliberately delayed the execution. Her trembling body wouldn't stop. She wanted to beg for help, for mercy. As her resolve wavered, her body suddenly floated. It was surprisingly anticlimactic. She expected the rope to tighten, to choke her, but there was no such sensation. Had she died in agony without realizing it, or had she already passed into the afterlife? When the darkness of her blindfold lifted, a familiar face greeted her. "Shilene, did you die too?" "Don't be ridiculous," Shilene replied. "I'm very much alive." She was alive. Relief flooded Luteia. But why was Shilene here? Looking down, Luteia saw the rope around her neck cleanly severed, and they stood below the gallows. The crowd buzzed with confusion, and Arvent's furious shout cut through the noise. Why? Why is she here? The palace hall was filled with Arvent's knights, including the kingdom's mightiest warrior. No one should have come to her aid. Luteia hadn't even dared to hope for it. Yet here Shilene was. She had come alone. With a swift stroke, Shilene cut the chains binding Luteia's shackles and stood protectively in front of her. Bandages covered her body. She was far more wounded than Luteia. Yet, with unshakable confidence, Shilene declared, "I'm here to save you." Facing a host of enemies, her answer carried no trace of doubt. Chapter 43. Tell me your truth. Every soul in the hall stared at Shilene, their faces etched with shock. The mere fact that someone had appeared to rescue Luteia moments before her execution was astonishing enough, but for some, the surprise carried a deeper weight. "Claude, what is this?" Arvent bellowed. "You struck her down, didn't you?" "Indeed, I did," Claude replied coolly. "But does her survival change anything?" Arvent's furious expression faltered at Claude's words, and gradually his composure returned. "You're right," he said. "As you say, one little girl surviving changes nothing. Kill her at once. Resume Luteia's execution." At Arvent's command, the nearby knights sprang into motion. Shilene pulled a document from her pocket and declared in a resounding voice, "I am Shilene Hazekura, here as the proxy of the first princess, Flare Lindworm." Flare's proxy? Arvent's face darkened. The knights advancing toward Shilene froze at the mention of Flare's name. The proxy of a princess, regardless of Arvent's orders, invoking that title before the public made any reckless action untenable. This was the trump card Flare had entrusted to Shilene to save Luteia. As the first princess, Flare Lindworm demands the release of Luteia Halenwerk, Shilene proclaimed. The reason? Her charges warrant further investigation, as her innocence cannot be ruled out. "Innocent? Ha," Arvent scoffed. "I hold the evidence. No matter your excuses, Luteia will never be released." "Hear me out," Shilene continued. "This decree, issued in the name of First Princess Flare Lindworm, challenges First Prince Arvent Lindworm to a duel. I, Shilene Hazekura, will serve as Flare's champion." "Fthahahaha," Arvent burst into laughter. "What nonsense! Why would I, in this situation, accept your absurd duel?" His laughter rang out, but the knights and onlookers couldn't hide their unease. A princess challenging a prince to a duel, an established practice among the kingdom's royalty and nobility. Yet, being challenged didn't mandate acceptance. Refusing would spread word of his cowardice, but Arvent had no reason to agree when he held every advantage. Shilene knew this, but her proclamation wasn't finished. "A duel demands stakes, doesn't it?" she said. "What could you possibly offer?" Arvent sneered. "If Flare were to gracefully cede the throne, I might consider it." "Exactly." "What?" Arvent's voice cracked in disbelief. Shilene addressed the entire hall, her words clear and unwavering. "If I, Shilene Hazekura, lose this duel, Flare Lindworm will forfeit all rights to the throne. That is the full extent of this decree." "Are you mad?" Arvent shot to his feet, stunned. The hall erupted in murmurs. It was only natural, a girl appearing at Luteia's execution, invoking the princess's name and speaking of the throne's succession. But the document Shilene held bore Flare's royal seal, unmistakable to Arvent. He knew it was genuine, and her words forced him to weigh his options. Should he accept the duel? He appeared conflicted, but according to Flare, Arvent would undoubtedly take the challenge. If Flare relinquished her claim to the throne, there'd be no need to execute Luteia, and all threats to Arvent's rule would vanish. Victory in the duel would ensure Flare could never ascend, as stipulated in the decree. "The throne's succession?" Luteia, slumped on the ground, whispered in a trembling voice. "What are you saying?" Her weakened state couldn't mask the anger in her eyes. "For me, you're doing this to save me." "That's right," Shilene replied. "The princess is betting everything on me to save you." "No, you're alive, you shouldn't have come," Luteia cried. She meant that Shilene, miraculously alive despite her wounds, shouldn't have risked herself in a den of enemies just to rescue her, as Flare had warned. "If you lose, it's all over," Luteia said. "As long as Flare's claim to the throne remains, there's still hope, even if I'm executed." "Why would you?" "She said she wants to save you because you're her friend," Shilene replied. "She entrusted everything to a stranger like me." "That's no, you can't do this for me. It's wrong. Go back, there's still time before he accepts." And what happens to you then? Shilene interrupted, turning to face Luteia directly. If I leave now, you'll be executed. I know that, Luteia said. You don't get it, do you want to die? I have no choice. That's not what I'm asking. Shilene grabbed Luteia's shoulders, her tone sharp with frustration. I'm asking if you want to die or live. That's a pointless question, Luteia said. It's not, Shilene insisted. I came to save you. The princess is risking everything to save you. And you're saying you don't want that. How could I? Luteia choked out. For someone like me, why did you even come? Because I'm your bodyguard, Shilene said. A bodyguard's duty is to protect. I've grown stronger, but I failed you before. Now I can fulfill that duty. Let me protect you. That's my truth. So, tell me your truth, Shilene urged. Forget the princess, forget what you think you can't hope for. I want to hear what you really feel. I can't say it, I could never. It's okay, Shilene said, pulling Luteia into a gentle embrace. Being trusted by you wasn't a bad feeling. Honestly, it made me happy, so trust me now. I won't lose. I told you before, didn't I? Even if the whole world turns against you, I'll protect you. Luteia faltered. She had never voiced her true feelings. Even when they first met, pursued by assassins, she remained composed. The only time she showed raw emotion was when speaking of her mother. That moment had shown Shilene that Luteia was just an ordinary girl. Her noble status didn't matter. Right now, she was a lone girl with no allies, and Shilene was here to save her. Luteia, her body trembling, finally spoke. I know I shouldn't want this, but please save me. Her whispered plea, wrung from her heart, met Shilene's instant response. Consider it done. Shilene turned to face Arvent once more. He, too, seemed to have resolved to accept the challenge. This duel, I can name a champion as well, correct? He asked. Of course, Shilene replied. She had known from the start. To save Luteia, she would have to defeat the kingdom's mightiest knight. Section, Audiobook by Masquerade at Masquerade Audiobooks. Chapter 44. The Curse. The grand hall of the palace fell silent. Moments ago, it had been the stage for a young girl's execution. Now, it was set for a duel. Standing with unshakable confidence was Claude, the kingdom's mightiest knight. Facing him was Shilene, a battered girl covered in wounds. To any observer, the outcome seemed clear. An unscathed titan, renowned by all as the strongest, pitted against an injured, unknown girl. The result was all but certain. The only one in the hall who believed in Shilene's victory was Luteia, standing behind her. This is pointless, Claude said, his voice tinged with disbelief as he faced Shilene. You won't know until we try, she replied. Pathetic, Claude scoffed. You've already lost to me once. You felt the overwhelming gap in our strength. Yet you return, only to wager the throne's succession in a duel. It's so absurd I can't even laugh. You talk a lot, Shilene said. What? All I'll say is this, don't pull any cheap tricks. Insolent brat, Claude growled. A wreck like you, I'll cut you down and be done with it. There was no signal to start. The moment they gripped their weapons, the battle began. Shilene drew a stunning blade, its crimson edge gleaming with an otherworldly beauty. That's, Luteia gasped. She recognized it immediately. This was the second trump card Flair had entrusted to Shilene, or rather to Luteia. A replacement for your broken blade, Claude remarked. Well sourced, I'll give you that. You don't know what it is, Shilene said. Kind of surprising, considering it belonged to royalty. Something Flair gave you, Claude asked, but what does one blade matter? Your attacks won't pierce me. An immense surge of mana erupted from Claude, the air trembling under its weight. The onlookers gasped, overwhelmed by his power. Arvent, watching Claude, smirked with smug certainty. Shilene's execution was about to begin, and once she fell, Luteia would be his. Scatter this time, little girl, Claude declared. With a resounding whoosh, his mana-charged greatsword swung down. Shilene parried the blow with her crimson blade. The ground cracked beneath the strike's force, a testament to its devastating power. What? Claude muttered, stunned. He wasn't alone in his shock. Shilene had deflected his attack. Her blade showed no sign of damage. Leaping forward, she struck at Claude's neck. He dodged reflexively, but the blade grazed him, drawing blood. Shilene's strike had pierced Claude. Impossible, Claude stammered. Your strike, with barely any mana, shouldn't have. He stopped, realization dawning. That blade, he said. Bingo, Shilene replied. The blade Shilene wielded was known as the Cursed Blade. A curse? Shilene had asked. Yes, Flare had explained. It's said to drain the life force of its wielder. Holding it saps one's strength. Flare had drawn the blade from its sheath. Its crimson edge was breathtaking, yet it seemed almost as if it had drunk blood, lending it an eerie aura. This blade hails from an eastern kingdom, Flare said. It was brought here generations ago, in a past king's era. Drains life force, huh? You seem fine holding it, Shilene noted. Indeed, Flare replied. I feel no ill effects. What does that mean? To be precise, this blade consumes mana, Flare clarified. Forged from a rare material called crimson ore, it continuously absorbs mana, making it extraordinarily durable, an unbreakable edge. However, as I mentioned, it drains the wielder's mana relentlessly. For those unaccustomed to it, the burden is severe. So the reason you can wield it, Shilene began. I was born with almost no mana, Flare said. For someone like me, it poses no strain. You're the same, aren't you? To a discerning eye, Shilene's low mana was evident. In battle, it was a crippling disadvantage. But for wielding this blade, it was the perfect talent. Shilene leveled the crimson blade at Claude and declared, My body has no mana left, but this blade, it holds more mana than you can imagine. And as long as it keeps absorbing mana, your defenses mean nothing. I see, Claude said. The one blade only you could wield. I don't believe in fate, Shilene replied, but I can't help thinking it's no coincidence I'm standing here with this in my hand. With the only blade capable of cutting Claude, Shilene faced him head-on. Chapter 45. Full strength. You can cut me now, so what? Claude said. He swung his greatsword, unleashing a wave of mana that surged toward Shilene like a tidal force. Her body bled from multiple gashes, as if sliced by an invisible blade. Truly desperate, Claude mocked. Abandoning all mana means forsaking any resistance to it. A mere trickle of my mana tears your skin and draws blood. We're nowhere near equals. You're not wrong, Shilene admitted. She didn't deny it. Claude's mana reserves were undeniably immense, and fighting without mana was reckless, she knew that. But to Shilene, mana or no mana was irrelevant. She had long accepted her lack of innate talent and honed her swordsmanship instead. She had grown strong to defeat any enemy with a single blade. Now was the moment to prove her worth. I'm not thinking about being your equal, she said, but I won't lose. Where does that confidence come from? Claude asked. Youthful arrogance, utterly reckless. Reckless or not, we'll find out, Shilene replied. She sprang into motion. Claude cloaked himself in mana, its overflow a clear danger to Shilene. But she didn't retreat. Claude swung his greatsword. Shilene leaped, evading the strike. Even if the blade missed, the unleashed mana could be lethal, forcing her to dodge. Yet Claude swung from a distance where his blade couldn't reach, a clear move to keep Shilene at bay. She closed the gap, entering the range of his sword. Immediately, Claude brought his greatsword down. HMPH. Exhaling sharply, Shilene parried the blow with her crimson blade. The strike was powerful, but its speed was manageable. The ground shattered beneath, but Shilene had already leaped, landing a strike on Claude's shoulder. TCH. Her blade slipped through a gap in his armor, drawing a trickle of blood. Claude took damage for the second time. A ripple of shock ran through the onlookers. Though the wound was shallow, Claude was the one being struck. But blood seeped through the bandages wrapping Shilene's body. Her injuries hadn't fully healed, and reckless movement was reopening her wounds, a fact she'd known all along. A second hit, impressive, Claude said, facing Shilene with unshaken composure. It's been a while since I felt the sting of a blade, he continued. Even large beasts struggle to scratch me. You're welcome, Shilene quipped. But you've landed only 2 blows, Claude said. Look at yourself. Mana tears at your body, your wounds are reopening, you've got minutes left at best, and your breathing's already ragged. Shilene's breaths came unevenly. Her body screamed with pain. The situation allowed no margin for error. And defeat was not an option, an impossibly brutal burden for a single girl. Yet Shilene stood here by choice. She wouldn't allow herself to voice weakness, nor did she intend to. Instead, she flashed a grin. What's so funny? Claude asked. Fighting a strong opponent, it's fun, Shilene said. Ha 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 ha. Claude's stoic demeanor broke as he laughed loudly. What a character, he said. Cornered, yet you still laugh. He faced Shilene with deliberate slowness. the mana cloaking his body growing steadily denser. Let's see if you can laugh at this. A deafening roar, like a storm's howl, filled the hall. The cause was clear. Mana visibly surged from the gaps in Claude's armor, his form seeming to transform under its intensity. "Dragon-clad mana armor," he declared. "This is my full strength." For the first time, Claude unleashed his true power against the battered Shilene. The sight struck fear into every onlooker. Only Shilene, facing him, remained unfazed. "Nice," she said. "Now the real fight begins." Without a hint of hesitation, Shilene charged toward Claude. Chapter 46, The Final Strike. The outcome seemed inevitable. No one in the kingdom could hope to defeat Claude at his full strength. His monstrous mana was so overwhelming that merely approaching him felt like a death sentence. The duel would end swiftly. Everyone in the hall believed as much. Yet the battle raged on. The clash of greatsword and katana echoed through the air. The ground was gouged, stained red with splashes of blood. Most of it was Shilene's, but she kept fighting. "What's going on?" a voice murmured from the crowd. Claude's greatsword, propelled by surging mana, moved with terrifying speed. Shilene deflected each strike at the last possible moment. The overflowing mana tore new wounds across her body, but she showed no sign of faltering. She should have been past her limit, her bandaged body worsening with every move, the blood she'd lost enough to collapse her at any moment. Yet Shilene continued to wield her blade. Though his expression was hidden, it was Claude who betrayed signs of unease. A single graze would suffice. One hit was all he needed to kill Shilene, but his strikes couldn't connect. Despite his apparent dominance, Claude was being pushed back. She can win," a voice whispered in the crowd. "Hey, watch it," another hissed. Sorry. Not everyone accepted Luteia's execution unquestioningly, but no one could have stopped it. Not until they witnessed the battle unfolding before them. Standing against Claude, Shilene relentlessly parried his strikes, seizing every opening to land a blow. Her attacks were far from fatal. Compared to the wounds she endured, they barely hindered Claude. But the difference lay in their number. Claude hadn't landed a single strike, while Shilene's blade had reached him time and again. In the heat of battle, Claude alone grasped Shilene's true nature. She was growing. In this life-or-death struggle, Shilene was becoming stronger with every exchange. Perhaps, at their first encounter, Claude could have defeated her in this state. Before she wielded a blade capable of piercing him, he held the advantage. But not now. Ha ha. Shilene's breathing was ragged, her vision narrowing. All she could hear was the sound of Claude's approaching blade. That was enough. She still gripped her katana. She existed now to cut down the strongest before her. "Fall already?" Claude roared. He unleashed even more mana, pushing past his own limits. Pieces of his armor shattered, his form shifting to accelerate his strikes further. A single swing could carve the ground and send it flying. "Claude, what are you playing at?" Arvent shouted. "Finish her already." He still believed Claude held the upper hand. It was a reasonable assumption. Claude's position seemed overwhelmingly favorable. In truth, Shilene could collapse at any moment. A single pause and Claude's strike would obliterate her. "Shilene." Luteia, watching the battle, called her name. All she could do was believe. Yet she had made a wish she thought she shouldn't voice, but had spoken nonetheless. Shilene had answered with a single word: "Done." Luteia's faint call drew Shilene's gaze for a fleeting moment. In that instant, her movement stopped. "Got you," Claude bellowed, swinging his greatsword down. Dust billowed, and the shattered ground flew into the air. As the debris fell like rain, the hall fell silent. Arvent was the first to break it. "Ha ha 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 ha, you did it. It took long enough, but you're truly the strongest, huh." Only then did Arvent's eyes catch the truth. Everyone was looking skyward. As dusk approached, Shilene's crimson blade gleamed with an even deeper radiance. Claude's all-out strike, though devastatingly powerful, left a fleeting opening. Shilene had waited for that precise moment. One blade, armor cleaver. As she descended, Shilene brought her katana down, slicing into Claude. He staggered back, the torrent of mana he'd unleashed weakening. Pressing her advantage, Shilene readied another strike. The moment she kicked off the ground, Claude, anticipating her move, acted. His eyes gleamed beneath his helm, and he unleashed a blow meant to bisect her. But it cleaved only empty air. Shilene hadn't moved. She remained in a low stance, poised. Claude, sensing her killing intent, had mistaken her for charging. Chilene had orchestrated that illusion. Even a warrior of Claude's caliber could be deceived, but only once. That had been his mightiest strike. Magnificent, Claude murmured. Chilene swung her katana. The final strike decided the duel. Chapter 47, Live. Ha 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 phew. In the stillness, Chilene steadied her breathing. A clatter broke the silence as Arvent stumbled from his chair, collapsing to the floor. Impossible, Claude, you couldn't have lost. Wait, you're still alive, aren't you? He shouted. That girl's a wreck. Get up. One strike, that's all it takes. Kill her and everything will be mine. If you're going to die, take her with you. His words dripped with selfish desperation. Chilene fixed him with a look of disdain. For a moment, she considered cutting him down until Claude's voice reached her. You've won, he said. Take Lady Luteia. Still alive, huh? Tough as ever, Chilene remarked. I'll die soon enough, Claude replied. But I wanted to say one thing, I'm satisfied. To fight a warrior like you at the end, it was an honor. Same here, Chilene said. You were strong. Ha good, my wish is. Claude's words trailed off. Perhaps he had sided with Arvent or sought battle itself, for reasons now lost. There was no way to know. Chilene passed by Claude's fallen form and approached Luteia. Her face was on the verge of tears. Swaying with each step, Chilene stood before her. I won, she said. As promised. You're torn to pieces. Because of me, I'm sorry. No need to apologize, Chilene interrupted, extending a hand to Luteia. Let's go home. Yes. Luteia took her hand. The duel was won, and as promised, Chilene would take her back. But, don't mock me, Arvent roared, his voice thick with rage. I won't accept this. He turned to the palace knights. Kill them, she's half dead already. You don't need Claude, you can handle her, can't you? His orders were met with hesitation. It was only natural. In a duel between royals, even through proxies, the kingdom's mightiest knight had fallen. By the terms of the agreement, Luteia was to be handed over to Flare. I've already relinquished her to that girl, Arvent shouted. What happens next is my call. Are you defying me? A few knights stirred at his words. Arvent's influence still held sway, however faintly. But when they looked at Chilene, they froze. Her blood-soaked clothes and wounded body made her look like she could collapse at any moment. Yet her piercing killing intent was unmistakable, approach and die. None dared step closer. Useless fools, Arvent snarled. Fine, I'll do it myself. He seized a sword and charged toward Chilene. At that moment, the sound of many footsteps echoed through the hall. The crowd parted, murmuring, as Flare appeared, leading a contingent of knights. Flare, why are you here? Arvent demanded. I am the first princess, Flare replied calmly. Is there any question about my presence in the palace? Besides, as agreed, I am here to take Luteia back. Flare had prepared for this, betting on Chilene's victory. She knew Arvent would try to break the agreement, even if it meant disgracing himself before the public. Take her back? For what? Arvent sneered. I have proof she killed my guard. This, you mean? Flare held up the magical device that supposedly recorded Chilene's act. Seeing that, Arvent's face paled. How do you have that? A certain individual delivered it to me, Flare said. There's suspicion of tampering with this device. We'll conduct a proper investigation. Brother, I suggest you withdraw. No one moved to defend Arvent. Realizing his isolation, he let out a pathetic whimper and fled toward the palace. Who was that certain individual? Luteia asked. Hain, Chilene replied. I ran into her on the way here. Hain had said she could no longer aid in this fight, but she had brought one thing, a chance to save Luteia. I can't do any more than this, Hain had said, bowing her head. Please save milady. Chilene had replied with a single word, understood. Hain wasn't here now, and perhaps she had no intention of coming. But without question, she had helped save Luteia. Next time you see her, you should thank her, Chilene said. Yes, you're right, Luteia agreed. I want to talk more with Hain, and with you. Me? Chilene asked. Yes, of course. Because... At that moment, Chilene collapsed to the ground. Chilene, Luteia cried. Guess that's my limit, Chilene muttered. Her bleeding hadn't stopped. Flare's medics rushed to her side. Luteia's body was at its limit too, yet she refused to leave Chilene. Luteia, you need treatment too, Flare urged. I'm fine, Luteia insisted. But Flare fell silent. Chilene's condition looked beyond saving. Without mana, her body couldn't stem the blood loss. Even magical healing couldn't keep up. "I'll do it," Luteia declared. She cradled Shilene's head in her lap. As someone skilled in advanced healing magic, Luteia might have a chance to save her. Even so, Shilene's state was perilously close to hopeless. Looking at Shilene, barely conscious, Luteia fought back tears as she focused her mana. "I still know so little about you," she said, "so please live." Through a kiss, she poured mana directly into Shilene's body. Shilene's consciousness faded completely. Chapter 48, Killing the Heart. A week had passed since the duel. The capital remained abuzz with concerns over the shifting political landscape. It was no surprise, though fought through proxies, a duel between the first prince and first princess had taken place. The outcome was monumental. The 5 great noble houses unanimously declared Flair Lindworm the heir to the throne. The truth had surfaced. Luteia had been targeted by assassins sent by Arvent, and his underhanded schemes were gradually coming to light. Even those who once supported him turned their backs. "Of course, not everyone supports me outright," Flair said. "Many simply see no further value in backing my brother." "It's never straightforward, is it?" Luteia replied. Luteia, recovering in Flair's mansion, sat across from her friend. Her body hadn't fully healed, and she relied on a cane to walk. But she could eat, and no lasting effects seemed likely. Their conversations often turned to the future. Claude's death was a blow to the kingdom's strength. Some might think the loss of a single knight inconsequential, but Claude had undoubtedly been the nation's greatest asset. "There's much to do," Flair said. "As queen, I'll have to work tirelessly from now on." "I'll help however I can," Luteia offered. "You've already done more than enough," Flair said. "Without you, we wouldn't be here." "I didn't do anything," Luteia said, her expression clouding. "All I knew was that Arvent, a man like him, could never be king. Supporting you was my choice, of course, but I'm only alive because of Shilene." Her voice carried a pang of sorrow as she spoke of the absent Shilene. Despite her grievous injuries, Shilene had saved her. She was, without question, Luteia's savior. "Speaking of Shilene, I haven't seen her," Flair noted. "Just days ago, she was bedridden." "Her injuries were worse than mine, yet she's up and about," Luteia said. "How tough is she? I've scolded her, but she doesn't listen." Shilene had been unconscious for 2 days. Thanks to Luteia's healing magic, she barely survived. On the 3rd day, she awoke, and by the 4th, she was walking the mansion grounds. Luteia still needed a cane, yet Shilene, despite her unhealed wounds, was brimming with energy. "She's built differently," Luteia said with a sigh. It was hard to argue with that. "Do you know where she is now?" Flair asked. "Probably nearby," Luteia said. "I'll tell her to rest when she's back." "You should rest too, you know," Flair said. "I will soon," Luteia replied. "I'm waiting here for Shilene to return." "Then I'll keep you company," Flair said. The two began chatting idly, a tranquil moment unthinkable just days before. "Damn it, how did this happen to me?" In an empty room, Arvent muttered curses to himself. He still held the title of First Prince, but his misdeeds were exposed, making it nearly impossible to show his face in public. The throne was now beyond his reach. It's all her fault. Arvent's rage fixed on Luteia. If she had just become his wife, if she had obeyed, if she hadn't brought that bodyguard. "Asseg, I won't forgive you, Luteia. I'll kill you. No more mercy, no more keeping you alive." His face contorted with fury, Arvent made his resolve. He had lost much of his power, but options remained. He didn't need to cling to this kingdom. With his hidden resources and information, he could still target Luteia. He had wealth stashed away for just such a purpose. "You really are the worst kind of scum," a voice interrupted. "Who's there?" Arvent spun around. The window opened, and Shilene stepped inside. Bandages still wrapped her body, but she moved with casual ease, unhindered by her injuries. Arvent's face drained of color as he stared at her. What? This is the upper palace. How did you?" "Climbed in from outside, obviously," Shilene said. "The guards, where are they?" "I cut down your strongest," Shilene replied. "Regular knights, not even a challenge." Arvent recoiled, fear overtaking him. His hand brushed against a sword. He grabbed it, drawing the blade. "Don't move." In an instant, Shilene's katana was at his throat. "Gah!" Arvent froze. With a swift motion, Shilene threw him across the room. Despite their difference in size, Arvent's body sailed through the air, slamming into the wall. "Gah!" He slid to the floor, and Shilene's blade stabbed into the ground before him. Please, killing me will cause trouble, Arvent stammered. I'm still royalty. I know, Shilene said. Apparently, even a wretch like you can't just be killed. Flair and Luteia had explained as much. No matter how vile, disposing of royalty wasn't so simple, but Shilene hadn't come to kill Arvent. I'm Luteia's bodyguard, she said. What are you? In a flash, Shilene peeled off one of Arvent's fingernails. Galam and pH. As he tried to scream, Shilene stuffed a cloth into his mouth. Placing a finger to her lips, she fixed him with an icy stare. A bodyguard's job is to protect their charge, she said. But you. Left alone, you'll come for Luteia again. I can't ignore something so obvious. So. Crack, she tore off another fingernail. Arvent thrashed in agony. She dislocated his shoulder and crushed his leg with a nearby ornamental object. His muffled cries filled the room as Shilene continued. I don't need to kill you. There are other ways. From now on, I'm going to kill your heart, so you'll never dare target Luteia again. No need to endure it. First, you'll feel the same pain Luteia suffered. Arvent's spirit was already breaking, but this was only the beginning. After this day, Arvent Lindworm vanished from the public stage. He lived out his days fleeing from something, forever haunted by fear. Chapter 49, Together. Shilene returned to Flair's mansion as dusk settled over the capital. The city was vast, with countless sights still to explore. She planned to tour it properly once her injuries healed, but at the gate, Luteia was waiting. Shilene muttered. Luteia snapped. You're barely healed and you're wandering around. Where have you been? Oh, just taking care of some business, Shilene said vaguely. Business? You need to be careful. Arvent might still try something. I know. That worry was no longer necessary, but Shilene chose not to tell Luteia. Luteia, still reliant on a cane to walk, had apparently been waiting here for her. You could have rested in your room, Shilene said. I was talking with Flair while waiting, Luteia replied. But you took so long. With that, she gently leaned against Shilene. Don't worry me like that, Luteia said. Your injuries are worse than mine. I told you, didn't I? I'm trained for this isn't an excuse to push yourself, Luteia interrupted. All right, Shilene said. I'll rest for a bit. Her work was done. Now, Shilene intended to focus on recovery, letting her wounds heal. She could already move freely, but surviving such grievous injuries was nothing short of miraculous. Her resilience, honed through years of training in life-or-death environments, was likely the only reason she was still standing. As they strolled through the mansion grounds, they talked about the future. Once you're healed, I'll show you around the capital, Luteia said. Sounds great, Shilene replied. I've been wanting to see more. Haven't you been sightseeing on your own lately? Luteia asked. I've seen some of this area, Shilene said. It's quiet, nice. It is, Luteia agreed. So peaceful it's hard to believe. I wish Hain could have been here. Hain hadn't returned to Luteia. Her whereabouts remained unknown. Shilene had been the last to see her, and in that moment, Hain had seemed to entrust Luteia's safety to her. For Hain, Luteia was likely the closest thing to family after years by her side. Forgetting her couldn't be easy. She'll come back eventually, Shilene said. If she doesn't, we'll go find her. Find her? We don't have any leads, Luteia said. So you're giving up. I don't want to, Luteia admitted. Then it's settled, Shilene said. I'll help you look. In that case, we should discuss your contract moving forward, Luteia said. The contract, her role as a bodyguard. Oh, right, we did talk about that, Shilene said. Let's hear your offer. How about a 10-year contract? Luteia suggested. Shilene's eyes widened. 10 years, that's a long commitment. What? Luteia stammered. Isn't that normal for hiring a bodyguard? Well, I always plan to protect my charge for life. That's how I approach this job, Shilene said. Your resolve is incredible, Luteia said, awed. That was before I became a traveler, though, Shilene added. And I don't come cheap, you know. I'll pay, Luteia said. It's only fair for a contract. You saved my life. How could I even repay you for the battle in the palace? That one's on me, Shilene said. I did it because I wanted to. Because you wanted to, that doesn't mean I'm okay with it, Luteia protested. Your healing covered it, Shilene teased, touching her lips with a finger. Luteia's face flushed crimson. That was unavoidable, she sputtered. You said you didn't remember. I don't, Shilene said, smirking. But you're blushing. Did I miss something juicy? And nothing happened, Luteia insisted. Nothing at all. It was my first time, Shilane said. What? Luteia's face grew even redder at Shilane's words. Almost dying, Shilane clarified. Don't tease me, Luteia cried. Haha, you're so fun, Luteia, Shilane laughed. Hey, wait. Shilane walked ahead, with Luteia hurrying to catch up. Her consciousness had indeed faded, but Shilane remembered. Luteia had saved her life, and that kiss, her first, was, as Luteia said, an act of necessity. Shilane didn't dwell on it. Still, it wasn't a bad feeling. With that thought, Shilane resolved to stay by Luteia's side. A girl who had lost her charge had found a new one to walk beside. Author's note: thank you for reading this far. With this, Chapter 1 comes to a close. I'm planning to compile and post Chapter 2 once I've written a decent chunk of it. Chapter 2 will focus on Haynes' unresolved story, as it's the central thread left hanging. End of Volume 1.